Hey, Bellin. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. This afternoon, good afternoon, everybody. I will be chairing the hearing. My name is Robert Hutchings. I'm joined on the panel by Lynn Nesbitt and Richard Whitbread. The assessor representing the City of Winnipeg Assessment and Taxation Department is Kem Wong, and our recording secretary today is Bellin Rojo. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into this hearing. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave this meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking of the matters must be sworn in. We advise that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by this Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with this Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have this assessor's testimony followed by questioning by the applicant, then the panel members, and the applicant's testimony followed again by questioning by the assessor and the panel. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Today, we will be hearing items 1 through 8 on our docket. Ms. Rojo, can you please affirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony?
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
I'm Wong.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state your full name.
Thank you. Wesley Vanbrugh with MMP LLP.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rojo. Good afternoon to the assessor and the applicant. First property on the docket, item number 1 is file number 22420. Address is 216 Edison Avenue, and we're dealing with a Realty 2023 appeal. And just to confirm, there are no outstanding issues to deal with by either party. Mr. Wong?
Nothing.
Okay, the applicant, no outstanding issues?
No, Mr. Chair, no outstanding issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wong, bear with us 1 second while we get up your brief, please. Okay, Mr. Wong, when you're ready, 216 Edison Avenue.
Okay, the subject property is 216 Edison Avenue. The roll number is 040-071-93700. This is a residential apartment block. It was built in 2003 and it has 71 suites with 50 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's in the East Kildonan area, just off Henderson Highway. On page 4 are some pictures of the subject property. This is an assisted living property, which has a lot of common areas for including a large dining room. The subject property is an assisted living property, and I'm not aware of any assisted living property sales. So we are going to value this property as if it were an apartment building, because it most resembles an apartment building. On page 5, our income valuation summary, we use average rents of $942 to get a potential income of $802,000. We used a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $777,000, and we used a 46% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $412,000. Capped at 4.65%, we have an estimated market value of $8,867,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market, and maybe a little bit lower than what's in the market. On the bottom of page 6 are some expense comparables. They range from 33 to 47%. This supports the model expense ratio of 46.95%. On page 7 is a comparable sale. The subject property was built in 2003. The comparable sale, 333 Ward, was built in 2006. The 33 Ward sold for $174,000 a unit. That supports the assessed value for the subject at $124,000 per unit, and the same thing with the sale of 333 Ward, sold for $158 a square foot, and that supports the subject property's $128 a square foot assessment. See on the bottom of page 7 that they are similar. They're both wood frame construction and built in the same time frame. On page 8 is the information on how we derived our cap rates, with the majority of the cap rates being between 4.8 and 5.6%, but there are some cap rates that are below 4.8%, and there are some cap rates that are higher than 5.6%. On page 9 are some cap rate sales to substantiate the model cap rates. Those cap rates range from 3.6% to 5.74%. On page 11 is the income statement supplied by the owner. Page 13 is the rent roll for the subject property. You can see that the rents are fairly high in the $2,000 and $3,000 range, but it is an assisted living, and that includes foods and services. On page 16 is the permit for the subject property that was taken out in 2002. The project value for the subject was $5 million in 2002. like I said, on the top of page 16, when you include the land value and the entrepreneurial profit in the year 2002, I think this supports the current assessed value, April 1st, 2021 of $8,867,000. So for the subject property, the model rents, the expenses and the cap rates are supported by the market. And when you look at the construction value and land value and entrepreneurial profit, I think that also supports the model value. And the comparable sale of 333 Ward supports the model value. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $8,867,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Does the applicant have any questions on the assessor's evidence presented so far?
Just a few questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess starting off, and I think the assessor already mentioned this, but just to confirm, when we're looking at this subject property, this is an assisted living facility, correct?
Yes.
And as an assisted living facility, there's a variety of other services that they provide to their residents, such as food, activities, laundry, light housekeeping. Would that be the case in this situation here?
Yes.
Okay. Do assisted living facilities typically have, I guess the next question should be, when we take a look at the parameters that were used, so parameters on page 6, all these properties for the rent comparables, these are all apartment buildings, is that correct?
Yes.
So none of these are assisted living facilities?
No, we're trying to look at this as an apartment building because it most resembles an apartment building, and we're not really able to value it as an assisted living property because as far as I know, I haven't noticed any assisted living properties trade in our market. So I felt it was most accurate to value the property as if it were an apartment building.
For the expense comparables, these again are all 45 Kildonan Green, 333 Ward, 835 Sterling Line. These are all apartment buildings, multifamily buildings, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the expense ratio that we're calculating would be for a multifamily building, not for an assisted living facility, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last one, and then for 333 Ward, you would say that this is not an assisted living facility. You mentioned that there's no sale, so you will confirm that this is just a multifamily property. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do multifamily properties and assisted living facilities typically have the same expense ratio?
I'm not sure.
So again, if you're providing additional supports for staff members, you're going to have food. Of course, stripping that out, we're looking at the fee simple. But after we consider all of the other factors that would be associated, do you think that they would be assisted living facilities would have a similar, or is it possible that the expense ratio would be a little higher for an assisted living facility than a typical multifamily property?
It would likely be different, but like I said, we're trying to look at this as an apartment building because we don't really have any assisted living sales. So the most accurate thing would be to try to value it as similarly as possible. And like when you look at 216 Edison and 333 Ward, generally speaking, they do look similar, and we do feel that we valued it fairly.
If we flip to page 11 of your brief here, we'll just give a moment to get there. And just let me know when you're there.
Yeah, page 11.
Yeah. So when we take a look at the profit and loss statement for the property, you would agree that there's a number of line items here that you wouldn't typically see in a multifamily situation. Activity expenses, food expenses, different charges along the lines of what's included within there. It looks like it includes utilities, electricity, gas, water, a variety of things. So again, if we're including a lot of items, if there's a lot of items that would not typically be in a multifamily property, would that not lead us to the conclusion that the expense ratio might be a little bit higher for an assisted living facility?
Well, the expenses, they might be higher for an assisted living facility, but if you look at an apartment building, we're looking at this as an apartment building. We're not necessarily looking at it as item A, B, and C as an assisted living, and item EFG as an apartment, like, a cap rate apartment rate, it'd be kind of difficult to sort of parse out what to use and what not to use. So felt it was most appropriate to use apartment parameters, which includes the apartment expense rate.
If we could flip to page 8. So this is the capitalization rate study.
Yes.
Are you aware, does Cushman and Wakefield and CBRE, do they report on seniors living capitalization rates?
I am not aware.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And then last question, so if we can move to page 16, please.
Yes.
Okay, so to confirm, the valuation date that we're looking at in this situation is April 1st, 2021, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and as of April 1st, 2021, you would agree that we were still fairly in the throes of COVID, at least with all the challenges that were being faced at that point in time?
I think that might, we were in COVID at that time, yes.
Okay. Now, based on your knowledge of the news, would you say that multifamily or that assisted living facilities were impacted more or less by COVID compared to typical multifamily properties?
I am not sure.
All right. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Cam, did you visit this property?
I did not inspect the property.
In the interest of efficiency in all of the docket items, did you visit any of the properties on the docket? Of the
Maybe just 70. Actually, no, I haven't.
Okay, so you're not aware of the condition of the facilities. Are you aware of the configuration of the suites in this facility?
I am not.
When I hear assisted living, I sometimes think kind of like a bachelor's suite without a stove, a fridge, maybe a microwave. Do you have any knowledge of that?
I'm not sure about the size of the suites. I'm just aware of the common areas and I guess the total size of the building. And sometimes the suites can be smaller, but there are a decent amount of common areas. And to sort of maybe only value the suites is probably it doesn't. I think it's fair to evaluate the square footage of the building, and that includes the common areas. And so when we are looking at this as an apartment building, we're kind of valuing the whole building, like not just the suites and excluding the common areas, but the whole square, the total square footage.
Do you think it not fair that hypothetically, if they were all bachelor suites with no stove, fridge, and the buyer wanted to look at it as an apartment, they may be at a little bit of a disadvantage in that fashion?
I think if you were trying to fit that, like maybe a square peg into a round hole, yes, it would be. I would say it would be unfair, but it would also be unfair to just sort of value the smaller suites and not attribute any value to the common areas and the commercial grade kitchens. And so.
I'm cognizant of that. I'm more concerned about the marketability of the building in its total. Maybe the applicant can help us when we question him later.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything that has exchanged, whether it be assisted living or any sort of a seniors home. But so that's why we've tried to use market information that we do have that's available, which is, I guess, to do with apartment buildings, and we feel it's reasonable considering that they do look like apartment buildings, aside from their common areas and maybe the smaller units.
But I believe it is all model driven, correct?
Yes.
Yes, you don't intervene. And sort of interject your thinking into the numbers that the model has derived.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
You don't adjust the numbers that the model puts out.
In this case, I don't think so.
Okay.
Uh,
One other question. I'm showing 50, it's not a big issue, 50 parking at $55, I believe. I don't know what it is, 33,000 in revenue, but the statements only show $11,220 of revenue. Do you count for that kind of discrepancy when you look at the numbers, or is that too small to worry about?
Yeah, it's pretty much model driven, where we take the, say, parking revenue from property owners that submit their income and expense information to us, and we attribute a certain amount of parking revenue into the rental rate that we apply.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Richard. Lynn, any questions?
Yes, I also have some questions. So, Mr. Wong, I'm looking at your page 6. Specifically the line gross floor area per unit. So in deriving that for our subject property, did you allocate some of that common area to each unit? Is that how you came up with that?
That gross floor area per unit is strictly the gross floor area, and above it says 69,000, and that would be divided by the number of units.
Oh, that's how that comes. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not the actual size of the unit.
It's not suite size. Okay.
No.
This is just a mathematical calculation.
Yeah, yes. To give you an idea of, I guess the size relative to the number of units.
So for all cases, that would include the common areas?
Yes, in this case, the subject property, that would include the common areas. And that's why I think it's a little bit, it's fair to sort of assess all the areas. Whereas like if we're only looking at the smaller units, then the dining rooms and the commercial kitchens, they're not attributing any value to that. And I'm not sure if that's the most equitable way to look at it.
Okay, so comparable number 2 has a very similar gross floor area. It's not far off in terms of number of units, and it's coming up with mathematically a larger floor area per unit and more rent. Is that a regular apartment, or is that a assisted living type place?
These are all the comparables are regular apartments, and like I've tried, we've tried to value it as a regular apartment because we don't have assisted living sales to derive cap rates or comparables.
So for comparable number 2, is that a large gross floor area? And I mean, I'm just thinking about assisted living units. It's got a huge dining room.
Yeah.
Often they have several like a little fireside place and gyms and hallways and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So this apartment would seem to have a fair amount of common area as well then, would you think?
No, it just means that the units are probably bigger in the comparable. But that's why that gross floor area per unit is kind of useful, because it takes into consideration like all the area rather than only including the areas that they live in and not including the dining rooms and the recreational areas and the kitchens. So I think that is a good way to kind of compare them. It's more, apples to apples, I would say. Okay,
so for the subject, is the heat in the rent in our subject property? I see that it's mixed for your comparables.
I'm not sure.
Okay, no, that's okay. With respect to the pictures, did you or the assessment department take these pictures?
The first picture. No, the picture of 216 Edison is from their homesteadmanitoba.ca website.
Okay, so all of them on page 4 are also, they're just stock photos?
Yes.
So that doesn't necessarily speak to the condition or what it looks like inside.
Maybe not 100%, but I would say it's reasonably accurate. They're usually well maintained. So
Okay. One more question just about your cap rate. I'm looking at multifamily cap rates, 4.8 to 5.6, which is the 20th to 80th percentile. I see you've used a cap rate of 4.65. Can you explain why such a low cap rate?
We've used a 4.65. I'm not really too sure about the algorithm that is used to select the 4.65, but based off of the sales that I've seen, 4.65 is within the range for these types of newer properties.
So sorry, a 2003 property is considered a newer property?
I consider anything kind of in the 2000 to current would be the newer ones. And then there's a group that might be from 1970 to 1999. That's kind of a different group. And it's especially considered newer because there are buildings that are built in the early 1900s. So if it was built in 2003 and there's some that were built in 1900, then I would consider 2003 some of the newer buildings. And as you can see, the 2003 building, they look similar to a 2010 building or a 2012 building.
Okay. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Lynn. Mr. Wong, I'm going to look on, would you mind going to page 5 with the income value summary? And and you've got a detailed listing of the number of units and their 1 and 2 bedroom amounts. I would assume this building was inspected when it was first built and an assessor established those numbers. Would that be accurate? Or would you have any information on that, or the last time an assessor was in this building for an inspection?
I don't believe that it's been inspected in the last little while, but typically when we add these to the roll, we do verify the suite mix of the property before we add it onto the roll.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I ask is to follow up on Mr. Whitbread's question. It's detailing a 0 bachelors and a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. I suppose we'll verify with the applicant later on in his presentation whether that's accurate regarding Mr. Whitbread's question about possibly bachelor suites in there.
Yeah, I believe that it is accurate.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is regarding the submitted income and expense statement from the property on
Yes.
page 11. 11 and 12, pardon me, did you review this at all or put any weight in it?
It's hard for me to put. I did take a look at it, and it's hard for me to put any weight on it because we'd have to determine what to put weight on, what to include, what not to include, what to adjust, what not to adjust with regards to the income or the expenses. And on top of that, we'd be trying to apply that sort of very modified number against an apartment cap rate, which would be it would make more sense to sort of look at apartment market information regarding rent and income and expenses and use apartment cap rates rather than trying to parse out and adjust different line items. And how much you adjust certain line items would be purely a guess. Whereas if we look at market information, it is fairly reliable. And so I didn't put any, I typically don't put any weight on the income and expenses for assisted living properties because the rents can be wildly high, but so can the expenses.
Yeah, okay. So to try and split out the assisted living aspect of the property plus the business portion is difficult. The reason I asked was because I'm seeing some expenses declared for depreciation expense, building repairs and maintenance. Anyway, I guess you didn't put any weight on this, so I won't pursue it any further. Okay. That is my only question. Thank you, Mr. Wong. All right, to the applicant, just bear with us a second while we pull up your brief, please. All right. When you're ready, 216 Edison Avenue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So a couple of housekeeping issues before we dive too much in. I've been told at times I'm a bit of a fast speaker, so if I am speaking too quickly, please let me know, interrupt me, flag me down. I would rather that than be speeding ahead with no one able to follow.
Yeah,
Also,
sorry, may I interrupt? I was going to mention that actually with the time lag on the Zoom, if you could slow it down just a little bit. It's sometimes hard to understand you.
okay, certainly, yes, I
Thank
will
you very much.
aim to.
Can I interrupt also too, please? Maybe before we start or when you start, I just for the record, I note that the hearing date and time and boardroom are wrong on the brief. So perhaps you could just, for the record, correct them as you go through them, please.
Certainly, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. And then, sorry, the second matter, housekeeping issue is when I'm referring to page numbers, I'll be referring to the page number on the bottom right-hand corner, just so we can all be on the same page as we're moving through. And if there's questions along the way, please feel free to interrupt. I'd rather that and ask for clarification if that's needed as we go through. So with that, I'll get started. So you're absolutely correct. The date is correct at November the 3rd, but the hearing time was originally scheduled for 9 a.m. Unfortunately, due to some poor planning on my part, I had a hearing in the arm of Rosser this morning. So the Board of Revision was kind enough to move that for me to 1 p.m. So here we are. Fortunately, the arm of Rosser got figured out, but you don't know that in advance. If the board will turn with me to page 4, please. And just let me know when you're there.
We're good.
Excellent. So just the way I like to present and just to give the board a sense of where we're going, what I typically do is give a high-level view of the property, as well as some general information, and then dive down to the specifics as we get through, just so we all have an understanding of where we are. As mentioned, the property, and as assessor has described, is an assisted living facility that has been valued using the income approach to value. The building was constructed in 2003 and sits on 1.1 acres of land. The property was assessed at a value of $8,867,000. M&P is requesting the value to be reduced to $6,535,800. If the board will turn with me to page 5. On page 5, we have the assessment parameters as outlined by the City of Winnipeg Assessment Department there. You can see that they have their model-driven potential income. A vacancy rate is applied at 3.2%, an expense ratio of 46.95%, and a capitalization rate applied at 4.65%, resulting in that assessed value. The board moves with me to page 7. So on page 7, this is our valuation request. I'll go through each one of these items in more detail, but just to kind of give the board the sense of where we're going. So the first issue would be the vacancy rates. M&P will be requesting an 8.2% vacancy rate. The second is the expense allowance. M&P is requesting an expense allowance of 58.85%. And then finally is the capitalization rate for the property. M&P will be requesting a 6.25% capitalization rate be applied. All of these factors combined result in that requested value of $6,535,863, truncated to that $6,535,800. The board will turn with me to page 9. So page 9, we have an assessment, the location of the property as indicated by the City of Winnipeg Assessment Department. So that's a map from the Assessment Department, as well as an overhead view using Google Maps of the property itself, just showing the overhead view of what that property looks like in the configuration. Page 10, we have some exterior views of that property. Now, at this point, I'll just jump in really quickly. There was a question about the number of suites and the configuration of the suites. So the unit does indeed have 1 and 2 bedroom suites. The difference is when it comes to the kitchen, it's more of a kitchenette style kitchen. So it has a small fridge, a small stove, and it's more designed for snacks and what have you. Reason being is the way the reason the property is designed and developed that way is that the meals are provided within the assisted living facility. So meals are provided to the residents. So for that reason, there is no need for a full kitchen setup. So again, if you're taking a look at this property in comparison to multifamily property, yes, it does have some of the requirements, but it would be more akin to what you would see in maybe a longer stay hotel style approach. You know, that small fridge, that small stove. You can make small meals, but it's certainly not ideal for making all your meals all the time. The board will move with me to page 11. So as mentioned, with this fact that this property is an assisted living facility, the rents that they're charging or the revenue that's being charged, because you will see that revenue is quite high, includes meals, housekeeping, activities, laundry, as well as security. Activities include things like daily so bingo or yoga, various outings that the residents take within the facility. So all of that is built in into the rental revenue. So these buildings, the revenue they generate really is a combination between business and rental income. We'll get to this in a bit, but when we did talk to the owner, in most cases, when you talk to owners of assisted living facilities, they can give you the split between what is attributed to the realty and what is attributed to the business. They typically have that split. In this case, for a homestead, it's 50-50. So 50% of the revenue is attributed to the business, 50% of the revenue is attributed to the realty, which is a fairly common split in our experience when it comes to assisted living facilities. Now, again, when we take a look at this, our issue really is, when we take a look at how the city has assessed this property, is that an assisted living facility is not the same as a multifamily property. For a couple of reasons. One, when we take a look at it, the designs of the properties themselves are just a little different. They're designed with the intent of people eating meals in a common area, with having activity spaces. So there's a discussion about the size of the common area. And it's true, assisted living facilities typically have more common space. The second is that they experience different, they have different inputs or different things that affect them in the market. So rental units would draw the population from one group of the city. Assisted living facilities draw their population from another. You don't typically see younger people within assisted living facilities. They certainly have a very defined group of people that are going to be using them. As well, when we take a look at them, and particularly in the impact of COVID, we can show and we know that assisted living facilities were quite impacted. One of the reasons was because of the communal eating arrangements and just the number of staffing and how it works. There were a number of COVID cases that rocked through assisted living facilities. I'm sure we all recall pictures on the news of the military being brought in to assist with assisted living facilities that were overwhelmed in Ontario. And because of that, there really was a reluctance of family members to be putting people into assisted living facilities. As well, we saw that people were leaving assisted living facilities and those vacancies were not being filled up. So the reason I bring this up is really because when we look at the vacancy rate at 3.2%, it's not really a good indication of what was actually happening in assisted living facilities. So if the board will flip with me to page 16, please. And just let me know when you're there.
We're good.
Thank you. So CMHP actually tracks vacancies within assisted living facilities to see what the change has been over the time frame. So what we can see here, we provided a table, and I apologize, it's a little small. You can see that in Winnipeg CMA, for bachelors, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms in total, in each one of the instances, you can see that there is a fairly substantial increase in vacancy from 2020 to 2021. So you can see the vacancy, so that vacancy changed from 1.4% to 5.9 for bachelors, 2.5 to 9.2 for 1 bedrooms, as well as 2.4 to 4.9 for the 2 bedrooms. I believe so. And also, it should be noted that CMHC does this research in, I believe it's March and April. So when we're looking at this in terms of the timeframes, this is from March and April of 2021. So what we can see in each one of these instances is that there has been, over COVID, a significant increase in vacancy within these properties. So while there was not while we don't necessarily see an impact on multifamily properties when it comes to the impacts of COVID, because within multifamily properties, you're in your own individual unit, you're not being exposed, you don't eat meals with others, you don't have the common area that you would, whereas in assisted living facilities, that wasn't the case. The other thing was, because of COVID, a lot of the assisted living facilities and the requirements were almost essentially to lock them down. They became essentially like jails. Meals were taken in rooms because of the challenges out there, and activities were really curtailed. So because of these purposes and because of these things, we really did see that vacancy rate increase. So when we're taking a look at the property, that's why we're using that 8.2% vacancy rate to better reflect what the impact on assisted living facilities had been due to COVID and due to all these changes. The next item that we're looking at, if the board will turn with me to page 17, is the expenses. And the assessor is absolutely correct in saying that there are a lot of other expenses when it comes to assisted living facilities. We know that there certainly are amortization, there's food, there's activity costs. When we took a look at the income and expense statements provided, we saw that there were interest on loans, some miscellaneous items that had been included. As well, we know that the administration costs and the salaries were higher than what we usually see. Salaries for assisted living facilities typically include people that are running the kitchens, running the various activities. So there certainly is a larger cost there. So what MP has done is we've actually gone through and we've made some adjustments to account for that. So if the board will, and I apologize, if you'll have to flip with me here, if the board will flip with me to page 24 and just let me know when you're there.
Yes, we're good.
Excellent. So what MP has done is we've taken the income and expense statements, so you can see the 21 and 2020 there. And what we've done is we removed the amortization, the food and kitchen supplies, the interest on the long-term loans, as well as the miscellaneous costs. As well, we've adjusted the salaries, wages, and benefits. We're using 4% of the total revenue because, again, there is typically salary. You need a property manager within the particularly within a site like this. So we're using 4% of the total revenue, or the revenue for that site, as well as management fee. We're using that 5% management fee, which is fairly typical management fee to be used. From that, what we've done is we've recreated the expenses for the property. Additionally, for the revenue, we've looked at the revenue and using the indicated 50% ratio to determine how much of that revenue is coming from the realty items. So from that, what we get a revenue of $1,081,458 for 2020. We get expenses of $584,287. And that's when we look at those two combined, that's where we're getting our expense ratio. Now, some things to keep in mind when we take a look at assisted living facilities, when you're paying your money, you're paying your monthly fee, everything is included. So that includes your utility, that includes all your utilities, that includes the security on the property, that includes the laundry for that property, that, you know, there's, I believe that in this one, as I mentioned, that the parking is additional. But for the most part, everything is going to be all included within those rates. So when you have everything included, as a result of that, you're going to have typically higher expense ratios. In our experience, we find that assisted living facilities, the expense ratios typically are anywhere between 5 to 10% higher than what we would see for a multifamily property because of these additional costs. So that's where we're getting. So again, that's if we go to back to page 17, looking at these adjustments, considering the property, that's where we're getting a 58.85% expenses. And then finally, if the board will turn me to page 18. So now, again, with assisted living facilities, when they do sell, and they typically sell in large portfolios. As far as I'm aware, we have not seen assisted living facilities in Winnipeg selling. However, we do know they do trade. There are companies, or publicly traded companies that do trade in them. And when they're buying them, the sale price is a little complicated because it includes both the realty as well as the business value. However, Cushman and Wakefield, as well as CBRE, do track this information. What we have on page 18 is a table, and what we're showing here is we're showing the difference between seniors housing and multi-residential properties. The property in question that we have that's been under appeal, that's been appealed today, has been assessed with a capitalization rate of 4.65%. We look at page 18, Cushman and Wakefield and CBRE, they're indicating that capitalization rates for multifamily properties, Q1 of 2021, ranges from about 5 to 6%. But yet, when we look at the seniors housing for A's, we can see that they range from 6.25% to 7%. For Cushman and Wakefield, CBRE is indicating 6.25% to 6.75%. And for B's, we're seeing 7.5% to 8.5%. Long term is a little bit higher, around the same area. So again, we can see there's actually a significant difference in the market in how multifamily properties trade compared to the seniors housing, which makes sense. There's additional risk. It's not for every investor. There's certainly a group of investors that like it, some that don't. We know that there's additional expenses. We know that there's additional issues such as vacancy rates that have an impact. And we know that all of these things would be considered by someone who's buying a property. When we look at Q2 2021, CBRE didn't report, but we did have for Cushman and Wakefield, same result. We can see that there is that gap, a fairly significant gap, of about 1.25 between where we're looking for seniors housing and multifamily properties. So again, considering all the factors around the situation, we felt that a 6.25% capitalization rate would be more appropriate to use and more reflective of how seniors living facilities would trade within the market. The board turns with me to page 19. On page 19, we have our income approach that we've already seen before. Again, just to draw the boards through it, we've taken 50% of the revenue for the property, as that's what is indicated to us as applied to the realty items. We've used an 8.2% vacancy allowance, 58.85% expense allowance, and a 6.25% capitalization rate to arrive at the requested value of $6,535,863 truncated, and then truncated to $6,535,800. If the board just flips with me to page 23. So on page 23, we have the income and expense statement for the property, so that's in its entirety. Page 24 is the income and expense statement with the adjustments made by M&P to get what those rates would be. The board will move with us to page 26. I'll just give the board a moment to get there.
We're good.
Excellent. So on page 26, you can see I emailed June 16, 2022, Reviewing the homestead properties, I have a quick question. Do you happen to have the separation of revenue received between the rental for the property and the amenities packages? And then you can see referred back, Julia indicated Wesley, our breakdown is 50-50. So again, we can see here as from the owner that the split in the revenue is 50% to the realty, 50% to the business. So again, supporting why we split the revenue the way we did. Starting on page 30. If the board will turn with me there.
We're good.
So on page 30, we have the 2021 Seniors Housing Survey. We can see this survey was conducted in April and May of 2021. So this was done by CMHC. And this is where we got those parameters from. The board, bear with me for a moment. So there's a brief outline on the methodology. Starting at page 30, page 32 and 33 outline some general outputs. You can see across the market in almost every situation on page 32 and 33 that vacancy rates have been up for for the assisted living facilities. Again, and seniors housing. Again, that's partly because of, well, not partly, a huge component of that is because of COVID and the impact this had on the industry. Page 39, we have the seniors housing report. Again, this is just some further information. And then page 40, we have the outcome, which is the vacancy of standard spaces by unit type. This is what we had referenced earlier on when we were looking at the vacancy for the property. As you can see, for 2021, overall vacancy for the multifamily or for the assisted living facilities is 8.2%, which is what we use within our analysis. Starting on page 43, we have the market reports. This is from CBRE for Q1 2021.
Pardon me, what page are you on?
Oh, I apologize. So if I apologize, page 43, not 23. Page, yeah. So as indicated, this is the Q1 2021 market report that we can see. And if we go to page 58, and the board just let me know when you're there. We can see this is the reported capitalization rates for multifamily properties. We can see those multifamily properties are kind of in the 5 to 6% capitalization rates, low-rise Bs at 6%. And then when we take a look at the seniors housing, we can see those capitalization rates run from 6.25% to 8.25%. So quite a bit higher. If the board turns to me to page 66.
Okay.
We have the information from Cushman and Wakefield. Again, same results. When you take a look at multifamily properties compared to seniors housing, you can see there's a fairly substantial difference in terms of the capitalization rates that these properties are selling at. And then starting on page 69, we have the Cushman and Wakefield. This is Q2 2020. And again, just give me 1 second here. If the board turns with me to page 86. And just let me know when you're there.
Okay.
You can again see here, this is Q2 2022, or 2020, this is the I apologize, Q2 2022. We can see that the rates are up.
Okay.
So this again just shows that as we've gone through COVID, and granted this is after the fact, this is after the valuation date, but what we can see is we can see that not only are the rates for seniors living different than what we see for multifamily, but they're actually increasing, and a portion of that is due to the fact that there is more risk. Certainly COVID was not kind on the seniors living facilities. We certainly saw that bear out within the market. So again, something that certainly needs to be taken in consideration when coming up for a value of these properties at that time frame.
Okay, sir. So I think it would be safe to assume that this information will be included in each of your following briefs for the remaining properties on the docket. Okay, so should we consider this evidence presented one time and carried forward for each of those?
Yeah. So it's only it'll be for 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe there'll be 4 files. I can indicate which ones they are if you like, Mr. Chair. But yes, they will be very much the same.
Yeah, just summarize, please.
Yeah. Wait, did you want me to give you the addresses for those right now? Or did you want me to just deal with it when we get to them?
No, we'll do them as we get to them to keep track of what's. Yeah, please.
Sounds good. And then finally, if we just jump, the board jumps with me to 162. And I won't go through it in any exhaustive detail, but just to point the board in the direction of where we are. So starting on page 162, we have the information, a number of news articles in regards to the impact of COVID on seniors living. So we have a report from Statistics Canada. And then as we move through, we have various news articles and what have you. That goes until page 179. So in case there was any questions about what the impact of COVID has been on the seniors living facilities, we provided that information there for the board's reference, but I will go through it in exhaustive detail. And then finally, starting out on page 181, this is documentation from the city of Winnipeg. The city of Winnipeg's valuation of income producing properties. As you look through that, you'll notice that there is no consideration for seniors living facilities. So again, when we take a look at each one of these factors, it really is our position that a seniors living facility is not a multifamily property. They perform differently within the market. There's different stressors on the seniors living facilities. They would have different vacancy rates and different capitalization rates, different expense ratios because of what's typically included or not included. So again, it would be our position that they should be valued. To use a multifamily model to value these is inappropriate, or would not result in a fair market value for them. With that, I conclude my presentation. I welcome any questions from the board or from the assessment department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wong, any questions on the applicant's brief?
I have a couple questions or a few questions. With regards to assisted living and seniors homes, are you aware of any assisted living sales or seniors home sales in the city of Winnipeg?
No, I'm not.
On your page 7.
Yes.
Just, I guess it's just with regards to your requested value of $6,535,000. That's working out to about 92,000 per unit. I mean, without any assisted living sales or seniors home sales, how are you able to sort of reconcile your requested value in terms of how accurate it might be?
So again, we just income approach is one recognized approach for the market valuation. So we've used information from the property itself, the income and expenses from the property, adjusting to account for remove non-realty items, as well as used market reports when they're indicating the capitalization rates as how these properties typically transact within the market. Using those those pieces of information, that's how we arrived at our valuation. So if you're asking me, do I have any sales to show that it's $92 a square foot of assisted living facilities? No, I don't. We have used inputs that are verified from within market reports or from the property to come up with that value.
Okay. And on your page 26.
Yes.
The email is indicating that the income was breaking down 50-50 in terms of the residential and the business. Were they able to break down the expenses regarding which part of the expenses were related to the business and which part of the expenses were related to the residential?
So we did break that down on page 24. If you flip to that, I'll give a moment to get there.
Well, that's your breakdown, correct?
Right, yes. So when we take a look at it, we can see things. So advertising and promotion would be for the building, which would be the realty. Administration would be for the building, which would be the realty. Insurance would be for the building, which would be the realty. Interest and bank charge would be for the business, which would be the realty. Office would be for the business or for the building. Again, professional fees, same thing. Property taxes for the building, repair and maintenance would be for the building. Salaries, wages, and benefits. We made an adjustment again, recognizing that there's not going to be. We didn't think it wouldn't be appropriate to use the full amount because there are quite a few people that need to get paid. So what we've done is we've used 4% of the revenue for the property. Typically, these properties at 71 units would have a property manager on site or a caretaker. So we get to a value of 43,000, which would be reasonable for that. Internet, telephone, and tax would be the full amount. The same thing with the utilities, because again, that would all be related to the property. So we have gone through to consider which expenses are related to the property and which ones would be related to the business. Just try to strip out that business value.
Okay. And with regards to the property taxes, you're attributing the full amount to the residential and nothing towards the business?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Property taxes would be based on the realty. So the building's there, it's being assessed. And from what it sounds like, it's been assessed as a multifamily property. So all those taxes would directly be attributed to the building.
So I guess the owner of the property, they didn't give you a breakdown of what might be a residential or business in terms of expenses?
No, we didn't ask. We looked through we found as we looked through the income and expense statement, it was pretty clear what should or shouldn't be included as we were making those adjustments.
That's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Lynn, any questions of the applicant?
I do have a question. In your analysis, you speak quite a bit about seniors housing. Can you define for me, especially with respect to the other market reports, seniors housing seems to encompass a broad array of housing. Can you define what seniors housing is?
Yeah, you bet. So seniors housing would be these similar to assisted living facilities where you have 2 or 3 meals a day, activities, and then long-term care homes would be a separate, is a separate, like the more nursing homes where you have a medical component within it, nursing staff providing care around the board. That's a separate item and viewed separately within market reports. So you can see long-term. If you give me one moment here, I'll just see if I can hunt down that as an example. So if the board turns with me to page 61. And I apologize, you're right. I probably should have made this definition or clarification earlier on in the process. Just let me know what you're there.
Is this the page that starts with Investment Trends Toronto?
I apologize. No, it should be page 61. It should. Oh, you're right. It says Toronto. That's not the right one. I apologize. It should be. Oh, page 58. Sorry. 3 up. And if you can confirm that says Winnipeg, Investment Trust Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Okay. When you look at seniors housing under the category, you can see that it's independent / assisted living, A and B, and then you can see below that long-term care. So the long-term care is more the nursing home style, where you actually have a medical component. The independent assisted living facilities more so are relating to this kind of facility where there's activities being provided, scheduled activities, meals that are being provided within the home, that sort of thing when it's being reviewed.
Okay, so I understand assisted living in terms of what's provided here in Manitoba with, the communal meals and activities and all that sort of thing. Then what is independent living? Is that just straight 55 plus apartments?
I think, and again, I can't, I would speculate, it would just be it'd be, kind of another way of referring to assisted living, but that would be my speculation.
Yeah, just
I
that slash suggests to me it's something different. So I'm just trying to clarify what it might be.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know. To the honest answer is I don't know.
Okay, that's fair enough. If you don't know, that's okay. Your page it is my turn, right, to ask these questions? I've lost my track. Page 30. We were talking about, this is your CMHC market report, I think.
Yep.
The Housing Observer. Is this a CMHC thing?
This is a document from the CMHC, that's correct.
Okay, and when did you say these, survey was conducted in May, also in May 2021, correct?
Yeah, it's conducted in April and May of 2021. So I figured you captured the market right around that valuation date of April 1st, 2021.
Would you consider May 2021 post-reference? Is it post-reference?
I think if we look at when the information is coming in, if they're doing it in April and May, I think the information would have been collected right at that point, right around the valuation date, because the information would have been for the year prior. They would be looking at it from the year for the years previous to that. So understanding that May is a month past, but I know they started in April and they were looking at information that had been in the market prior to that. So I think it would be a fairly good indication of what vacancy rates would be for assisted living facilities at that point in time.
Okay, and I was actually going to ask about vacancy rates. You did point to that one table, and I've already lost the page number, but it does show the trend going up for that 1 year, 20 to 21, I think it was.
Correct.
But what about 19 to 20? Like in 1 year, does that a trend make, or would you?
So I did,
can I just ask, like I've seen other analyses where vacancy rates have been stabilized. Do you think picking 1 year is representative, that one particular year, or would it be fair to look at more of a stabilized vacancy?
In most situations, I would agree. I would agree a stabilized vacancy would be the appropriate way, because you can have blips within the market. However, in a situation where you're looking at the full market, and you also have to take into consideration, like nothing like COVID has ever happened before. It's completely unprecedented, and it's kind of changed. I mean, for better or for worse, it's changed the way that we live our lives and the way we look at it on a go-forward basis. So I think, one, if we're taking a look at what the implications of the market has been, I don't know. I think that looking at a time frame with COVID, as opposed to looking at the years prior without COVID, I think that would probably be a pretty good indication of what the world we're looking in right now looks like.
And does this vacancy rate of 8.2, does it reflect the actual vacancy rate, or is this a modeled vacancy rate?
It's a good question. I believe that it was a survey. And so it would be, my understanding is it would be the actual vacancy rates. I'm just reading the CMHC report right now.
Okay, maybe I should rephrase the question. You looked at actual expenses to come up with your expense ratio. Did you use an actual vacancy rate for this property in your workup, your valuation workup, or did you just take the model from the CMHC report?
Yeah, so we use the model from a CMHC report.
Okay.
Yeah, the rationale is you'd be competing within the market. If we're seeing rates go up, it's going to be more challenging to get residents within.
Okay, so you have a mix of model plus actuals in your valuation workup, correct? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so the income and the revenue directly from the property, and then we'd be performing within the market, anyone who would be buying, any investor who would be purchasing, would be looking around to see what's the risk as we're buying within this market. In a situation, an extreme situation where there's 30% vacancy within the market, even if you have a 100% occupied building, anyone who's buying that knows as you lose tenants, it's going to be much more challenging to be able to get a new tenant in versus a market where you have a very tight market.
And do you know what the actual vacancy rate was? Just my final question.
You know what, I don't.
Okay.
I would speculate that it was probably close to 100%, but again, I don't have that information, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very much. That's no further questions. Sorry it took so long.
Thank you, Lynn. No problem. Richard, any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I want to come back to that risk issue around the configuration of the suites and looking at this as a multifamily residence as opposed to a seniors housing. Have you visited this property, sir?
I have not, unfortunately.
Have not. Can you tell me what the true configuration of these suites? Are they kitchen, living room, bedroom, bathroom with stove, fridge?
Yes, so it has a small kitchen, more of a kitchenette style. So the kitchen is more designed to do like a light meal or kind of midday snacks. So you have a small stove. Oh,
excuse me. There is a stove and there is a fridge and maybe a microwave.
Yeah. So it'd be more similar to what you'd find in like a kitchenette within a hotel.
Or a small apartment.
I mean, yeah, I guess you could look at it that way. I think if you're the challenge is the kitchens in these suites, my understanding they aren't designed to be used they're designed for light meals and for just, a light meal throughout the day or what have you, because they're going to take their meals in the dining room. So they're not really designed in a way to facilitate regular usage, 3 meals a day sort of situation.
There's a business of feeding these folks in the building. That is a business, which is my next point. Now, you talk about your expense ratio being so high because you have all of these other items like food, staff to prepare. And so you push your expense ratio up into the 50s. But in truth, when I looked at Mr. Wong's base rent at $942, nobody pays that rent. The rents in this place are in something like $2,400 to $3,500 a month. So they are actually paying for that food and that help, those activities. That is an add-on to that base rent of $900 a month, if I understand this correctly.
Yeah. And actually, if you turn to page 24, so actually, I'll get you to reference 2 pages, if you will. Page 24 and page 19.
Which first? 24?
Yeah, let's go to 24 first. And if you could just let me know when you're there.
I'm there.
Okay, so what we've done is we've taken the revenue for the property and we've actually taken 50% to apply to the realty items. So you can see the revenue that we're looking at is $1,081,458. As well, we go through and we extract the items or subtract the items that from the expenses that would not be related to the realty, the running of the business. So we take away food, we take away the amortization, we take away loans, we take away miscellaneous. As well, we make adjustments for the management fees. So we use a 5% management fee, so of the revenue, which is typical in this situation. And then the same thing for salaries, wages, and benefits. We use 4% because again, we recognize that not all those wages, benefits, and salaries. There's a lot that are going to be attributed to the staffing within the building. So we just use 4% of the total revenue to account for that, and that gets us a value for staffing of about $43,000, which is right around what you'd expect a caretaker to be at for the property. From those, after we make those adjustments, we get to expenses of $585,287. Now, if the board will turn with me to page 19, and I'll just give you a moment to get there.
Good.
Okay, so when you look at page 19, we are actually looking at we're using a higher potential income for the properties. We're not using the $902 that's being applied. We've got that $1,081,458 that's being used in there because we think that that is a more accurate reflection of the money that's going to the realty. We're using the 8.2% vacancy rate because that's what we're seeing within the market. And then we're applying the expense ratio of 58.85% because that's what, again, we've calculated after we strip out the food, after we adjust the salaries to properly or more accurately reflect what the expenses would be for this type of property. Applying that 6.25% capitalization rate is how we come to our total value. So again, we understand that there are additional costs and that they would be covered within the, and we've done our best to strip it out and just look at the realty items. So we have made that adjustment. So if we're looking at, I haven't run the numbers, but if we're looking at what the value would be on a the rent would be on a per unit basis. So we're looking at about $1,269 per unit versus the one that.
Sorry, I missed that.
We're using $1,269 per unit. That's what it equates to. So we have taken that. So to answer your question, we do recognize that there is some value, because again, utilities are captured within it, all these other factors. We do recognize that that's going to have an impact on rent. So we did attribute that and did consider that when we're looking at the valuation, and then made those appropriate adjustments for the expense ratio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, two questions. No, I'll make an observation. Even though you both use different paths to get to a net income, you're actually only approximately $4,200 apart.
$4,200 apart.
On
Net
NOI,
net operating income is $4,200 apart.
Yeah.
You've used an 8.2% vacancy as opposed to 3.2. So we have individual components that are higher on your side than the assessor. But in the end, the net operating income is $408,491 as opposed to $412,300 approximately.
Mm.
The cap rate is a difference of, I believe, 1.6% between the assessor's cap rate and your cap rate. My question is, you used a cap rate of 6.25%, but you're also using a vacancy allowance of 8.2%. Would that does your higher cap rate, I guess my question is, are you double dipping there on the higher vacancy and the higher cap rate?
I don't think so. Again, my opinion is that these are completely different assets. Understanding your point about the NOIs is a very keen observation for sure. I think in this situation it's a little hard because we're almost comparing apples to oranges. We're looking at two very different assets. They perform differently within the market. They have different risks. They're going to be different investors are going to be interested in these assets, and so looking at them.
Okay. Thank you. That explains. Thank you. Okay. And my second question is going back to the pandemic reference. I think in Lynn's questioning, you stated that care homes were separate from assisted living, or from assisted living. Is that correct?
Yeah, like the long-term care homes and nursing homes are viewed differently. I believe they're referred to it. They're understood as long-term care when you look at the capitalization rate reports.
Okay, right. So, in your references to the Army coming in and everything, they were related to care homes, I believe. I guess my question is, between a care home and an assisted living home, is the pandemic negative influence less on the assisted living side?
I think it depends on how you look at it. So one of the challenges with the assisted living facilities is because of the restrictions on dining, because of the restrictions on the ability to be in person, they were locked down fairly tightly. And our understanding and talking to owners is it was not like jail, but similar to jail. Meals were taken in the rooms. There was very little social interaction because they had to limit those interactions that they had.
Okay.
And additionally, like there was a large reluctance from families to be putting people into the assisted living facilities, as well as a big push where a lot of people were being withdrawn from the assisted living facilities because of a lot of the challenges that are related with COVID. So you're right, absolutely, that in terms of the military, you're probably right, I misspoke. That would have been more related to nursing homes. But when we take a look, we certainly know that assisted living facilities were negatively affected for a variety of reasons over the pandemic, and they're still dealing with it now, right? Depends on how you look at it. Some people look at COVID over. Some people look at it as a new reality of how you look at it.
Okay.
But,
Thank you. And my last question is regarding the physical layout of the individual suites. I think you agreed with, or you stated to Richard that these are like, and I'll compare it to, from my experience, a Residence Inn suite where there's a kitchenette, a little dining area, but there is a separate bedroom, and there is basically privacy, like an apartment.
yeah, like a suite, Holiday Inn suites. You're probably not going to want to eat every meal, but you can certainly do a couple meals here and there.
Okay, that's my only question. Any requirement for summary, Mr. Wong?
I guess maybe a quick summary, just with regards to, I guess, how we've looked at the property. We've looked at the property as an apartment building, and it's based off of known market information, or information that we can actually go to the market and validate in terms of the rent, the expenses, but maybe more importantly, the cap rate. And so whereas maybe trying to validate a value up against sales of seniors' homes and assisted living homes that we don't necessarily have, it may not be as accurate as the approach that the assessment department has taken. Okay,
thank you. And the applicant, any requirement?
Again, I think when we take, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'll just brief. I think when we take a look at these properties, they're a different asset class. They would appeal to a different investor, and there's different risks that would be related to these properties. I think that when we take a look at market reports, it's fairly clear that there is a difference in terms of how multifamily properties transact compared to how these types of properties transact. We can see that it's roughly 1.25 points at the very least. And we do feel that that adjustment on the capitalization rate, to use a capitalization rate of 4.65%, when we consider what we're seeing in market reports, is overlooking some of the unique aspects of the property. So that's why we feel a 6.25% capitalization rate would be reasonable and appropriate.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 216 Edison, and we're going to take a 5-minute recess, please. Thank you, Belen. I'll now call the hearing back to order. Next item on the docket is item number 2, file number 22-527. Address is 739 Kimberley Avenue, and we're dealing with a 2023 realty assessment. And I believe we have no outstanding issues by either party. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wong, when you are ready, please. 739 Kimberley Avenue.
Okay, the subject property is 739 Kimberley Avenue. The roll number is 020-614-21600. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1979 and has 57 suites with 74 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's in the East Kildonan area by Gateway. On page 4 are some pictures of the subject property, the interior photos from their property manager's website. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $930 to get a potential income of $636,000. We used a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $616,000. And we used a 47% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $324,000. capped at 5%. We have an estimated market value of $6,491,000. On page 6 are our rent comparables. Just shows the rents that we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 7 is a summary of the income statements submitted by the owner. See, in 2020, their income was $667,000. Their expenses are $381,000, but that included some capital expenditure for their heating and cooling. So I made an adjustment to remove that, but their expenses didn't include any management, so I added some management, and there's also an additional item which should not have been in the expenses, so I added it to the expenses. So their operating expenses for 2020 is $321,000. To try to stabilize their operating income, I used their 2020 income of $667,000. I averaged their expenses from 2019 to 2020 at $331,000, and their estimated net operating income based off of their 2019 and 20 income statement is $335,000. The actual NOI of $335,000 supports the model NOI of approximately $324,000. Page 8 and 9 is information on how we derived our cap rates. The cap rates on page 9 range from 3.6 to 5.744%. On page 11 is the income statement supplied by the owner. Once again, that's summarized on my page 7. So the actual NOI supports the model NOI, and the model cap rate is supported by the market. I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $6,491,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Does the applicant have any questions on the assessor's evidence presented?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we can turn to page 9, please. So page 9, when we take a look at these, you would agree that for the most part, with the exception of 2390 McPhillips, these are smaller properties? Or smaller units, number of units per property?
Well, the subject is about 57, so it's kind of right in the middle of the range. It's the comparables are smaller than the subject.
Okay, so when you're looking at units of smaller buildings, so 9-unit buildings, do you tend to see those sell with a lower capitalization rate compared to the larger units, larger buildings?
From my observation, they tend to have lower cap rates.
Right. So the larger the building, the smaller the pool of investors, you could say. There's not a lot of investors that could come up with, say $3 million or $4 million, whereas there are more investors that could come up with $1 million, right? It's more competition for the smaller properties. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, that's my view, is that myself and my friend can buy a 6-unit building, but we're not going to be able to come up with $10 or $20 million for an apartment building.
Okay. All right. So you would agree that typically, so there's just going to be fewer investors on the larger properties. Would that be a fair statement to make?
Probably.
Okay. And then when we take a look at 2390 McPhillips, you would agree that this is a much newer property than the subject property, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
Oh, I think you're muted there.
You're good, Richard?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no questions.
Lynn, any questions?
She's muted too.
I am. I have no questions either.
Thank you. And neither do I. Can the appellant ask for, pardon me, can the appellant wait 1 second while we get to his brief, please?
Certainly.
Okay. And I'm just quickly reviewing your brief, and I guess we have, can we assume that the information towards the back of the brief is a repeat of what was presented in the first?
This one will be different, Mr. Chair. So this is this is an apartment building, a multifamily property.
Okay.
So it would be a slightly different argument, but it's more supporting documentation, and I can just point the board to the pages that are relevant.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. When you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we can turn to page 1, the one thing I just want to highlight here, as been mentioned, is that the hearing date, the hearing time was indicated at 9 o'clock. If we can just change that to 1 o'clock, as that was obviously prior to the change.
Okay, thank you.
Everything else there is correct. If the board can move me to page 3 then, when you get a chance.
Okay,
Thank you. So as indicated by the assessor, the property is a 57 suite multi-residential property. We're not arguing that it is a multi-residential property. The property is constructed in 1979 and sits on 1.3 acres of land. The assessed value is $6,491,000. MP is requesting a value of $5,714,200. Page 4 and page 5 are is the current assessment breakdown for that property provided by the City of Winnipeg. The board will turn me to page 6 when you get a chance.
okay,
Page 6 is the requested assessment. So as you can see on the requested assessment, we're using the same vacancy allowance, using the same potential income for the property, using the same expense allowance. The only difference is in relation to the capitalization rate. So the city has used the capitalization, or the assessment department has used the capitalization rate of 5%. MP is requesting a capitalization rate of 5.68%. From that, we arrive at our value of $5,714,255. Page 8 and 9 are just pictures of the property. If the board moves with me to page 10.
okay,
Excellent. So here we have our capitalization rate study. So what we've done to calculate the capitalization rate is we've identified 4 properties that have transacted within the area. We have their year of construction of 1969 to 1972, so similar to what the subject property is. The suites are a little fewer, so they range from 18 to 44, so a little as close as we could get it. Sale dates are between January 2020 and September of 2020. And sale prices for these properties range from 1.8 million to 4.3 million. To calculate the capitalization rate, what we've used information from the CMHC. So we've determined what an appropriate rental rate or what a reasonable rental rate would be for these types of properties. We've used the typical vacancy rates, a 50% operating expense ratio to arrive at our NOI. You can see we've calculated those net operating incomes there. From that NOI, we've calculated the capitalization rate. So NOI divided by sale price gives us a cap rate. You can see that the capitalization rates for these properties range from 5.66% to 5.88%. When we take a look at that, we have a median of 5.68% and an average of 5.73%. Based on these sales, we feel that a capitalization rate of 5.68% would be reasonable. If the board will turn with me to page 19. And the board just left me know you're there.
okay,
So on page 19, we have the comparable pictures of the comparable properties that we've used within the sales. First one is 663 Jefferson. Second page 20 is 690 Jefferson. Page 21 is 1174 Jefferson. And then page 22 is 86 Q8. In terms of the CMHC information, if the board turns with me to page 25, I do apologize. I realize this probably came through a little small. Hopefully we can blow it up a little bit. If the board could just let me know if you're on that page.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent. So in terms of determining what the in terms of determining what what rate that we're using. So on the first page, we've taken a look at the CMHC reports the rents or the average rent per area for single bed, for 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms. And then on page 26, we have it per property type. So if you look on page 26, if you look, you can see properties that were built between 1960 and 1974 have a rate of $989. That's, you can find that in October 20th or the October 2020 on page 26 for older buildings between 1960 and 1974. We've used the 1 bedroom, recognizing that these buildings have typically a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, but we've used that 1 bedroom just to be conservative. When we're trying to determine what rate we should use. So that's where we got a rental rate from. Again, we've used the typical vacancy rate for each one of these areas as indicated by the city of Winnipeg, as well as a 50% expense ratio. The sales we got from the Johnson Market Report. You can find that starting at page 28, moving until page 31. So these just outline the sales that have been utilized. Finally, in terms of the other parameters that we have used, in terms of the vacancy rate as well as the expense ratios. If the board turns with me, starting on page 32, this is the information from the city of Winnipeg regarding valuation of income producing properties, 2023 general assessment. The board can see here, if you just give me a moment, starting on page 38. We have the inventory of properties. Page 39, we have the vacancy and collection loss. So you can see it outlines 2% for markets 1 and 9, 4.7 for market 8, 3.2 for the remaining markets. For the most part, when we took a look at these properties were located within the markets 2 at the 4.2% vacancy rate. As well as we can see operating expenses ranging between 34 to 65% with a median of 48.38. So we're using a 50% expense ratio. Again, just to be on the more generous side when we're looking at this, or I guess more conservative side when we're looking at it. And that's how we determine that capitalization rate. As requested by MMP. If the board will flip back with me to page 11. Now let's look at board give there.
Okay.
So on page 11 here we have sales. So we've taken a look at those properties, taken the sale price and looked at it on a sale price per sale price per unit basis. We can see that the 4 sales identified by MMP were selling for between 97 and 100, just a little over $100,000 per unit. And we can see the assessment for the subject property is at $113,000 per unit. Page 12, we have a map of those properties where the comparable properties are located. I apologize. Usually I do try to include pins to outline where they're located. Unfortunately, I don't have that in this case. Obviously, the subject property is located in the Rossmere community. The other properties are located along Jefferson as well as along Q8. So fairly close proximity to the subject property. Page 13, we have a requested value. So again, taking a look at these properties, All right, this property is M&P's position that the capitalization rate is too low at 5%. We are requesting a capitalization rate of 5.68%, which would result in that value of $5,714,200. I believe that concludes my presentation. I welcome any questions from the assessor or from the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions of the applicant?
Yes, this on your page 17.
Yes.
Is everyone there?
Mhm.
Yes.
The 2020 income was about 664,000. Is that correct?
Yep.
And on your page 13, you're utilizing the model potential income of 636,000.
We are. Yep.
Why would you not use the, I guess, the actual income?
Well, we didn't have an issue with the actual income. So we didn't have an issue with the vacancy rate, the income, or the expenses. The only issue we have with this property is in regards to the capitalization rate.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the applicant?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I have one question, and I'm going to ask to go to page 10 of your presentation and your cap rate study.
Yes.
And from what I understand, you're not using actual vacancy or expense ratios to calculate your cap rate, but using the CMHC averages. Is that correct?
Yeah, so as much as we love to use actuals, unfortunately, due to privacy, well, we have tried to get that information in the past. We were told that we were unable, they couldn't provide it. So in order to try to determine a capitalization rate, what we are doing is we're trying to determine what is the typical rent within the market. I think if you compare that to the assessor's rents, you can see that that's fairly comparable, the rent that CMHC has outlined, as well as what the typical vacancies are for the market and the expense ratio at 50%. So again, we're being conservative in the rents that we're using. We've just used the 1 bedroom. We understand that there's probably 2 bedroom suites within here, but we are trying to be as conservative as we can in our derivation of that cap rate.
Okay, so in your opinion, do these cap rates represent an actual real cap rate on those sales?
I think it probably provides, I don't think it's the actual sales. I mean, of course, while we would love to know the income and expenses for each one of these properties, that's unfortunately not something that's going to be provided to us. But I think it provides a pretty good indication of what a capitalization rate would be on these, what we could expect for these properties, especially considering that the rents that we're using are fairly, if we take a look at the rents outlined by the assessor in his brief, they're fairly in line with those rents as outlined for comparable properties. The same thing would be said about the vacancy rate and then that 50% expense ratio. Again, my experiences for multifamily properties, they're usually selling with expense ratios kind of in the 40 to 50% range, depending on, they typically have a 40 to 50% vacancy expense, depending on the property and the number of units, of course. But that's kind of how we would use that 50%.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for the explanation. That was my only question. Mr. Wong, any requirement for a summary or follow-up, anything, or?
Yeah, just there's some rebuttal for this property and a couple of properties.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that. Melon, do we have that included in our SharePoint?
Yes, I've already uploaded it.
Okay, so we have to refresh, I guess. Yeah.
Did you?
Do you have the Wi-Fi
No, sorry, I apologize. I'll just need a moment to
to get it?
get it.
Okay,
You know what, actually, let me see if I can get it on my,
it's not hard. I can send you the Wi-Fi password too.
oh, sure, that would be great.
Sorry, I
sorry.
should have asked at the beginning.
Bear with me for one moment.
Of course.
Also, our Wi-Fi is, we have a test,
Oh, give me 1 second.
or do you want me to email it to you?
No, I won't have access. I'm just gonna hold it down.
Then Richard, do you have it yet?
I have
Yep, I have.
So Cal guest, okay?
Yeah, and it's
See.
0 W 20 lowercase gu 3 lowercase stw
Yes.
tw 1 lowercase f1.
Okay, let me just.
So
So
it
yeah,
should say Cal 20 guest Wi-Fi with letters.
yeah, so Cal is all, Cal is all cap or all big, 20, and then the GU is small, 3, S, T, W is small, 1, F is small, 1, right?
Lynn, Richard, have you got that 6-page document yet?
Yes,
Okay. I'm not sure if the applicant, would you let us know when you've got it, please?
Yeah, certainly. Sorry, Paul, just give me one
No,
moment.
no problem. No. We'll all get up to speed here and then we'll proceed with Mr. Wong presenting his rebuttal.
That was sent at 1:44.
Yeah, I don't know. Unless during Calgary time, it sounds like I just sent.
Oh, yeah. No, I got, it starts with rebuttal, order revision, file numbers 22-527, 22-492, and 22-528. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah, then, and it's, 6 pages, just to confirm?
yes.
Okay, yeah, then I have it.
Okay. So we're all got the information for the rebuttal in front of us. Mr. Wong, when you are ready, please.
Okay. The indicated cap rate for MNP's cap rate portion for 690 Jefferson, the indicated cap rate was 5.68%. But when we look at the income and expenses for 690 Jefferson, the income was $242,000 for 2019 and $152,000 for 2019, giving a NOI of 89,000 approximately. If you apply that against the sale price, the actual cap rate is 3.21% compared to the indicated cap rate from MNP at 5.68%. And on page, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I didn't put page numbers on this. On the next page is the income and expenses for the 690 Jefferson, and their NOI is approximately 89,000. So I'm just saying that the indicated cap rate might be around closer to 3.2% compared to the 5.68% that the applicant has indicated.
Thank you. Is there any other relevant information for this?
No, the other two charts are for file numbers 22-492 and 22-528.
I see. So we're going to refer back to this.
Yeah.
When we get to them. Okay. So you're just disputing that one's cap rate at 690 Jefferson as presented by the appellant. Okay. Does the appellant have any questions of this rebuttal?
Sorry, just give me 1 second here, Mr. Chair. So you say the property had an NOI of 89,760. So based on my calculations, we're looking at a 63% expense ratio. And we're looking at rents of $720 per unit within that property. So an expense ratio of 72%, is that a little bit unusual? Or 62%, is that a little unusual for multifamily property?
I would say that's on the higher end of the range for a property such as this. It might be closer to 50%, but this is what has been indicated. And maybe if we looked at a few years, we could that rate, the expense ratio might be a little bit lower.
Have you looked at a few years, or is it this is just the information that was provided that 1 year?
Just 1 year.
Same question in terms of, are we looking at 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms? Because I'm getting a rate of $720 for rental rates, which again, I mean, I haven't rented an apartment for a while, but 720 seems a little low, particularly in this area of the city for what a rent would be. And when we consider especially when we consider the information you're providing with comparable properties.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the suite mix. I'm not sure about the types of units.
Okay, and I'm seeing this is. Do we know what the rental income was for 2020?
I do not know. I was looking at 2019 because the property sold in November 2020. So the previous full year would be 2019.
Would you? Okay. And we don't know if there's anything going on within that property that would have caused those rents to be a little lower.
No.
Then you indicate here income less interest. What does less interest mean?
There was if you look on the second page, there's just a line item 4,700, which is interest income.
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't.
That's pretty much just excluding that line item.
I'm assuming you made adjustments to account for the some of the repairs within the building.
What type of adjustments?
So I know so I'm just taking a look at the expenses here. So when I take a look, I see that there's some roof, some windows, some doors, public area, intercom. Some of these repairs that wouldn't necessarily be part of the day-to-day running of the property.
Looking at them, they seem to be fairly normal. I mean, if it was like $50,000 for the roof, it might be more an indication of capital expenditures, but it seems like the numbers look pretty normal to me.
Okay. Did you take a look at any of the other? So there's 3 other sales. There's 663 Jefferson, 117 4 Jefferson, and 86 Q8. Did you provide any information for any of those?
Yeah, for page 4 is for 25 Cromwell, and page 5 is for 555 Corden.
But more so that like you've provided it. So we provided 4 sales. You've provided for 690 Jefferson, but you didn't provide for the other 3.
For the other 3 properties in your cap rate study?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
It was only for 690 Jefferson.
So were the other 3, was the capitalization rates for the other 3 the same, higher, lower? Do we know?
I do not know.
Okay. All right. So we don't know if this is an outlier or this is indicative. We know that the expenses are on the higher side. We know that the rents they're generating would be quite a bit lower than what we see typically. But we don't know how that lines up with the other sales within the market, do we?
Well, he's only presenting 690 Jefferson as a rebuttal, and that's the only property that we're going to deal with, okay?
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that concludes my questions.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions of the rebuttal?
No questions, thank you.
Richard?
And I have none.
And I have none either. Thank you. Okay. So I believe we're in the summary stage here. Mr. Wong, requirement for summary at all?
No, thank you.
Does the applicant have requirement for summary?
Just that if you, even if you make that adjustment on that one sale, which, I mean, I don't know if it's entirely indicative of what the market would be, but you would still end up with a median that would be at that 5.66%. So, you know, again, I think even if we take a look at the information available, that doesn't really have, it wouldn't really have an impact on M&P's request, as we are using the median for our requested capitalization rate.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, that concludes 739 Kimberly. Next item on the docket is number 3, and I'm just going to get to that.
Sorry, one question for the assessor, I guess. The rebuttal document is going to be for all 3, right? So that's just, so I'll just keep that rebuttal document open as we go through the remaining ones.
Yes, please. Yes, that would be, yeah. And we'll make sure everybody's on the same page when we get to that rebuttal before we proceed with it, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Next property in the docket is item number 3, file number 22424. 75 Kildonan Green Drive, and we're dealing with a 2023 realty assessment appeal. Mr. Wong, just bear with me one second here, please. Okay, 75 Kildonan Green Drive, Mr. Wong, when you're ready.
The subject property is 75 Kildonan Green Drive. The roll number is 040-071-42800. It's a residential apartment block that's 4 stories high. It was built in 2009 to 2011. And there are 155 suites with 116 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. This is also a assisted living property. So we will be looking to the market in terms of for valuation purposes as an apartment building. On page 4 are some pictures of the subject property. There's some interior pictures. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,129 to get a potential income of $2,114,000. We use a 2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $2,071,000, and we use the 45% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $1,126,000. Capped at 4.85%, we have an estimated market value of $23,230,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market and might be a little bit lower than what the market is indicating. At the bottom of page 6 are some expense comparables for some newer buildings that range from 33 to 47%. This supports the model expense ratio, which is 45.62%. And on page 7 is a comparable sale of the subject property. I see 75 Kildonan Green. It's built in 2009, and 333 Ward is built in 2006. So they very, very similar in terms of age. And the 333 Ward sold for $158 a square foot, and we have it assessed at $137 a square foot. So I feel that the current assessment is supported by the market. On page 8 and 9 is information on how we derived our cap rates, and the cap rates range from 3.6 to 5.74%. On page 11 is the income statement provided by the owner. Once again, the rents are fairly high, but it includes a lot of services. When you look at the model rent and expenses and the cap rate, they are supported by the market, and the sale of 333 Ward supports the model value. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at 23,230,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Does the applicant have any questions of the assessor?
I was going to ask Mr. Chair, so this is another assisted living facility. The questions will be roughly the same. The questions would be the same as what we had seen in 216 Edison. Did you want me to ask them again, or are you comfortable just keeping the same questions?
No, I think we're comfortable with the information we received on the first one. First property, we had a quite lengthy discussion or presentation on that property. So I think we're good. If you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, that works for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Wong, pardon me. Lynn, any questions of the assessor?
I did have one, but I've lost it here. I see, Mr. Wong, that you've used a slightly different cap rate for this property than your previous assisted living. It's a difference of 2.2%, minimal, I agree, but it's different. Can you tell me why the model generates a different cap rate for this property versus Edison, which is only 6 years older?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. The only thing that I can think of is that I think this property is larger, and so maybe the cap rate is higher because of that. But
Okay.
in the end, the 4.85 is I feel it is kind of in the range.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't a large difference, but it was a difference, so it caught my eye.
Yeah.
And ditto, your expense ratio then is lower. Your model expense ratio is lower than for a smaller property. Is that a normal thing?
I'm not totally sure about that.
Okay. Maybe it's a function of age as well.
Well, I mean, the characteristics of the buildings are, I think the differences might account for the slight difference in expense ratio as well.
And what are the characteristics of the building that would account for it?
I actually, I'm not sure. I'm just saying, like, this building is, I guess, larger and built in a different year. Those types of attributes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Lynn. Richard, any questions?
I have none.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, my only question is on page 1, what is the effective year built of this property?
2009 to 2011.
Okay, so would it be 2010 or?
I would have to look into why there's a range there, but
okay,
I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. We got the 2 years, or 3 years, pardon me. Okay, range. Okay, that's my only question. Okay, now we're gonna bear with me. Can the applicant just bear with me until I get your brief up, please? Okay. Okay. When you're ready, sir, 75 Kildonan Green Drive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will move a little bit faster through this one, just if the board's okay, we'll be pointing out the pages. I won't necessarily go into it as a lot of the information is going to be the same. I'll just point out some of the relevant information for this particular property.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. So the board starts with me on page 3. I'll just give the board a second to get there. So as mentioned, it's a 156 suite assisted living facility. The property has been valued using the income approach. The property was constructed in 2010 and sits on 3.8 acres of land. This property has been assessed, as mentioned, at $23,230,000. M&P is requesting a value of $17,048,500. Pages 5 and 6 are the valuation breakdown for the property. Pages 4 and 5 are the valuation from the assessment department's breakdown of the property. Page 6, if the board will just turn with me there.
Okay.
Here we have the valuation. So similar to what we had seen from the previous property, the property has been assessed with a vacancy allowance of 2%. M&P is requesting an 8.2% vacancy allowance. You can see here that the potential income is a little higher for the property. Again, we've used the actual revenue for the property, 50% of that, to account for the business, to strip out the business expense. The expense allowance for this property is 53.13%, and the capitalization rate being utilized is at 6.25%. Using these parameters, we arrive at a valuation of $17,048,538, truncated at $17,048,500. Page 8 and 9 are just pictures of that property. Page 10 is a discussion about the differences of assisted living facilities compared to other facilities. Page 16 is the vacancy information that we had already presented from CMHC. Page 17 for the board's reference are the expenses. Same methodology as which was used for the previous file, 216 Edison. Took a look at the expenses. We stabilized the administration costs and the salaries, or stripped out the the additional cost for the administration costs and the salaries, and removed any expenses that would not be attributed to the realty. You can find that calculation on page 24, where we run those numbers there for the board. Page 18 is the capitalization rate discussion, which we previously had in terms of an appropriate capitalization rate to apply to the property. Same thing as what we've seen, market report discussion regarding the differences in caps between seniors housing and multi-residential properties, as well as those capitalization rates for the seniors housing. Page 19 is our conclusion with our value request of $17,048,500. Page 23 is the expense, the income expense statement for that property. Page 26 to 28 is the discussion about the split between realty and non-realty. Page 38 to 41, page 30 to 41 is the CMHC vacancy study that we had referenced previously. Starting on page 43, continuing until page continuing until pages 160 is the market reports, which is discussing seniors housing as well as the capitalization rates. And then starting on page 162, continuing until page 178 are the articles regarding some of the challenges seniors living has had with COVID. Page 181 to the end of the submission is information from the City of Winnipeg's website, or City of Winnipeg Assessment Department. So for the most part, most of that information, and again, if the board would like me to dig into any of that in particular, is going to be very much the same as what we've seen for 216. The only differences would be the actual performance of the property. So that would be the rental income as well as the expense ratio that's been applied.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Wong, any questions of the evidence presented by the applicant?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Richard, any questions?
More of an observation, but perhaps a question. Looking at page 13, we finally see a floor plan of an assisted living facility. And I'm looking at what is a pretty standard apartment, a one-bedroom apartment that could be rented out on its own if this building were to be sold as a multifamily residence. Would one not agree that that is a pretty standard looking one-bedroom apartment?
Yeah, I agree that they have the kitchenette. It does have a kitchenette, as you can see, kind of in that area with a small kitchen there. But I think one of the factors is when you look at this property, the property is designed for assisted living facilities because you have the, it would be unlikely that it would be purchased by someone who would be looking to use it for strictly apartment rentals. The property was designed and functions as an assisted living facility, and in my opinion, would sell to another person looking to run an assisted living facility. So when we factor all that into consideration, you know, I would suggest that there would still be, and it would still perform differently or function differently in the market compared to what we look at for multifamily properties.
I hear you. Thank you very much. No further
Thank you,
questions.
Richard. Lynn, any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I have no questions either. Mr. Wong, do you have rebuttal on this one at all, or
No,
time for summary? Any summary?
no, thank you.
Okay. Does the applicant have any summary required?
Again, I think when we take a look at these properties, there is a difference between multifamily properties and assisted living facilities. I think that the city has not taken that into consideration, and we do respectfully request the board to take a look at those vacancy rates, capitalization rates, and make those adjustments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so does anybody require a 5-minute break, or should we do one more?
One more.
Okay.
One more. Yeah.
Everybody okay? Okay. Okay, so we're going to proceed to item number 4 on the docket.
Mr. Chair?
No, it's okay, sorry, no, not for recess. I was just wondering, to make it easier for rebuttal, do you want me to include it in there for the items now? I've labeled it for each item that will be rebuttal.
Oh, that would be great, Bellen. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm including your copy in there now.
Okay. Do you need a minute, or can we proceed with the next? Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for that suggestion. Okay, next item on the docket is item number 22-492, 25 Cromwell Street. We're dealing with a 2023 realty appeal, and Mr. Wong, if you bear with us 1 second, get your brief up. Okay, 25 Cromwell Street. When you're ready, Mr. Wong.
Okay, for this property, we are requesting that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation of the MMA, and if a reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follow section 54 3.2 of the MAA. Basically, we're seeking non-cooperation on this property because the request for income and expense information wasn't returned to us for 2019.
Okay. Would you like to go through your proof of delivery and that kind of thing?
Sure. I guess it would be on my page 10.
Okay.
So we did send it, and it was received and signed for, but the information was not returned to us. So that's the reason that we're seeking non-cooperation.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we'll deal with this non-cooperation before the revision, okay?
Sure.
And so does the appellant have any response to the request for non-cooperation by the assessor?
So when I look, I see on page 11 and 12, I see a document. And I see, you know, page 11, or page 12, it looks like it's been filled out. So am I looking at two different documents here, or?
That document is for a different year. It's for 2018.
Okay, but it's.
Sorry, if you look on my page 2.
Okay.
I guess something was returned for 2018, but nothing was returned for 2019 and 2020. And so the last page on my brief is actually from 2018.
Because I'm taking a look here on page 2, you're showing response received May 6, 2019. And then when I look at the information on page 12, it looks like it was dated November 6, 2019. So that would be, we're a good solid 6 months after that. So would this not be for the 2020?
No, I mean, usually we request a 2020 and 2021. So November 2019, that's probably the request for 2018 information.
But that doesn't line up with your dates here. Sorry, I apologize. I'm just taking a look at your dates. You're saying the response was received May 6, 2019 for 18, right? Am I
Yes.
reading that correctly?
Yes.
So, and then I'm looking at a document on page 12 and it looks like it was dated, it says respond by November 8th, 2019, and they responded by November 6th, 2019. So where does this request fall into the mix?
It's possible that there might have been a couple of responses, one in May and one in November.
So what, I guess, did they respond to the request then? Like if we're seeing.
Well, I'm more specifically referring to the 2020 request for information.
But
Like the 2020 request for information. We requested it once in April and then once again in June, and we didn't receive a response from the owner.
And Mr. Wong, just to clarify, that was sent in 2021,
Yes.
requesting 2020 information,
Correct.
and that is what your request for non-compliance is based on.
Correct.
Does that explain it to the applicant?
Yeah, I'm still trying to, sorry, and I understand. Now, maybe this is semantic. So the purpose of the request is to collect information for 2020, right?
Yes.
Okay, and when we look at the information provided on page 12, it looks like for the most part, like this would have been filled out November 6, 2019. So that's essentially, we're 2 months away from 2020. Wouldn't that be the information that you'd be looking for anyway?
No, it's definitely not. Like, see, you can see on my page 2, we requested the information, the 2020 information on April 15th, 2021.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you're looking for the full 2020 year.
Yeah. And we can only do that afterwards, right?
Okay. The format of, the fact that there's 2 different documents here is just throwing me for a bit of a loop. I'm just trying to work my way through it.
Sorry, I guess that was just additional information. It's just a little bit of information rather than having no 2020 information. I threw in some additional 2018 information just to have some information.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Now, are you aware that this property was that this property was fairly vacant through 2020? Did you have any conversation with the owner?
Right now, we're dealing with the non-cooperation request. We'll deal with under factors in the valuation. But right now, you've asked your question or your comments, provided your comments for the request for non-cooperation. And Mr. Wong has replied to you. So we're going to consider both parties' evidence. We're going to recess for 5 minutes and consider both parties' evidence for the non-cooperation request. Thank you, Bellen. Okay, I will now call the hearing back to order. The panel has considered the evidence presented by both sides, and the panel will allow the request for non-cooperation, for non-compliance. So, Mr. Applicant, Bellen, do you have that documented? So, Mr. Appellant, that would mean that you're going to go first. The onus is reversed, or pardon me, put on you now. But I see that the assessor has made a recommendation to revise the assessed value from $818,000 down to $705,000. I'm going to ask you right now if you are in agreement with that, or would you like to proceed with your brief?
Unfortunately, Mr. Chair, I don't have permission from the owner to accept it, so I'll have to proceed accordingly.
Okay, so request or revision not accepted. Okay. Okay, so bear with us 1 second while we get to your brief, as you're proceeding first. Okay. And we're dealing with 25 Cromwell Street. When you are ready, please.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So if the board can turn with me, starting on page 3, just let me know when you're there. Oh, actually, you know what? Give me 1 second here. I apologize. If the board will turn with me to page 1 first. And just let me. So there's the adjustment here in terms of the hearing time. It's indicated at 9 o'clock. If we can change that to 1 o'clock, please, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
If we can turn to page 3. And the board can just let me know when you're there.
Yes, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. The subject property is 11-suite multi-residential property that was assessed using the income approach to value. The property was constructed in 1955 and sits on 7,491 square feet of land. The assessed value of the property is $818,000. MP is requesting a value of $682,700. Page 4 and 5 are the current assessments for that particular property. If the board will turn with me to page 6. And if the board can let me know when you're there.
Okay.
Thank you. So on page 6, we have the requested value. So here we're using a 2% vacancy allowance, same as the city. 51.78% expense allowance, same as the city. The difference is in terms of the capitalization rate. The city has applied a capitalization rate of 5.05%. MP is requesting a capitalization rate of 6.05%. With that 6.05%, we're arriving at a requested value of $682,707, truncated to $682,700. If the board can turn with me to page 8.
Okay.
So with page 8, we have a map. This is the assessment map from the city of Winnipeg. So you see the property is located just on the other side of St. Mary's Road there. This is fairly close proximity to downtown, located along Cromwell. So if you flip down a little bit, you can see an overhead view of the property. And then page 9, we just have 2 exterior views. Page 10, we have our issue, which is the capitalization rate. Here we've used 4 properties. We have they range in time, they range in age from 1946 to 1959. In number of units, they range from 11 to 14 units. The sales occurred in 18 and 19. And when we calculate the capitalization rate, similar to what we had done previously, we're using CMHC average rate, the CMHC average rates for bachelor units. So you can see we're using rents of between $474 and $826 for the property. Vacancy rates per the city between 1.8 and 3%. Expense ratios at 50% to arrive at the calculated NOI, so net operating incomes. Using those calculated NOIs, we're coming up with a capitalization rate for those properties ranging from 4.84% up to 7.93%. When we take a look at the average and the median, we end up with an average of 6.05 and a median of 5.72. One thing I'd just like to draw the board's attention to is when we take a look, you can see 25 Cromwell located within that property there. That property sold in September 2019 for $675,000. When we're taking a look at it. Additionally, one thing to know, So based on that information, so at page 11, on page 11, we should just show a location of where those properties are located that we've used in our analysis. So you can see that 2 of the properties are located close on St. Mary's Road. 1 is located just on the other side of the center point there. Page 12, we have just a conversation about the fact that the subject property sold for $675,000 September 2019. Page 13, we have our request. Here we can see our requested value. Same approach. Capitalization rate of 6.05%. Capitalizing that net operating income of $41,000, resulting in a valuation of $682,707 for that particular property. And again, the property sold for $675,000. Page 15 and 16 are the notice of hearings. Page 17, we just have some exterior pictures of the sales that we've used in our capitalization rate study. The board can just let me know when you're there.
Okay.
So the first sale we have is 227 Ferndale. We've included some pictures within that property. On page 18, 19, and 20. Page 21 is 210 St. Mary's Road. I apologize. Page 21 is 210 St. Mary's Road. Page 22 is 25 Cromwell, so the subject property. And page 23 is 31 Carlton. And that's 23 and 24. Page 26, continuing on until page 33, is just supporting documentation for the sales. So we've used the Johnson report to highlight the sales that we've utilized, just so the board can see where they've occurred. Page 35, we have information from CMHC. Taking a look at these properties, we've looked at it on, so we've used the information for the years of construction to determine what the rents would be, what is an appropriate rents request for that would be, those properties would be. I'll just give it a second here. So that information is page 35, and then starting at page 37, continuing until the end of page 83, is just supporting documentation from the city of Winnipeg, and showing how we came up with the rental rates for those properties, or sorry, the vacancy rates for those properties, as well as the expense ratios for those properties. There is a slight difference on one of the properties. I will just note, just give me 1 second here. So because, just in terms of location, you'll see that the vacancy rate, so since one of the properties, 31 Carlton, is located within a very close proximity to the subject property, but slightly different area, we've used a 3% vacancy rate for that property because it's located more downtown, versus the other ones located on St. Mary's. We're using that 1.8% vacancy rate for the calculation of the capitalization rate. But we have used that 50% expense ratio across the board. With that, I conclude our presentation. I welcome any questions from the board, from the assessor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wong, any questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Richard?
Yes, one. Was that sale in 2019 an arm's length sale?
Yes, as far as we're aware.
Sorry?
Yes, as far as we're aware, it was an arm's length transaction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Following up on that question, would you have a cap rate on that sale available?
So I didn't, because my understanding was that the building had been vacated, so there wasn't any revenue coming from the building. So we used typical CMHC information for that particular property. However, I believe that when I take a look at the information provided by the assessor, they're showing a gross potential income of $65,880. So I believe that was the information provided. Okay.
And my last question is, any knowledge of any improvements done after the purchase in 2019?
No, I do not. I believe that believe they are, there is the intent to, but I don't, they, as far as I understand, they hadn't started at, to this point in time.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only questions. Excuse me, Mr. Wong, do you have rebuttal on this one?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Wong is presenting his evidence as well.
Yes,
yeah, but we're gonna deal with his rebuttal to your evidence first.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mr. Wong, bear with us and we'll find that document. I believe we had, there we are. Bellin has attached it for this property, but I guess we're dealing only with one of them, I believe, if you'd like to proceed. Does everybody have it?
No,
Yep.
Sorry, Richard.
it's okay. It's just a little bit truncated on my screen. I have to open it to find it. My apologies.
It's okay.
I know it's here. So I see the third one.
I think Bellin added it to this.
I've got it.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Richard. Okay. And does the appellant have the rebuttal evidence in front of him?
I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please.
Yes, one of the sales in the cap rate study from the applicant is 25 Cromwell, which is, I guess, the subject property. Their indicated cap rate was 7.93%, but when looking at their 2018 income and expense information, it indicates a net operating income of about 31,000. And if you apply that against the sale price of 675,000, the actual cap rate is 4.7%.
Okay. Anything other relevant on this rebuttal?
Nope, that is it.
Okay, thank you. Does the applicant have any questions on the rebuttal at all?
You know?
Pardon me?
I do not. No, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we get a bit of an echo in that room there. Okay. So that concludes the evidence and the rebuttal presented by the appellant and the assessor's rebuttal. So now we're gonna bear with us 1 second. Mr. Wong, we'll get back to your evidence for 75 Cromwell. Does everybody have it?
Yep.
Pardon me, 25
Yes.
Cromwell, pardon me. Okay, when you're ready, Mr. Wong.
Okay, try to be a little bit quicker. The subject property is 25 Cromwell Street. The roll number is 060-912-63000. On the bottom of page 1, I'm recommending that the value be revised to 705,000. On page 2 is the sales history for the subject property, where it sold in 2019 for 675,000. On page 6 is my revised value calculation.
Perfect.
I adjusted the parameter, the model. The model was estimating their income to be 87,000, and it is their actual is significantly lower than that. So I made an adjustment to the income quality of this particular property, and it lowered the income to 78,000. And if you apply 2% vacancy, the income, the operating income is 77,000, and their expenses are 53.94% at 41,700, giving an NOI of 35,000, capped at 5.05%. The estimated market value is 705,000. The revised value of 705,000, you can see, is as of April 2021. I feel that it's supported by the sale price of 675,000, which is September 2019. So a little time has elapsed, and so I feel that the the subject's actual sale price supports the revised value that I am suggesting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wong. So we've got your updated work. Okay. Does the applicant have any questions on the assessor's revised workup?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Lynn, any questions of the assessor?
No, thank you. Other than just asking you to repeat, Mr. Wong. So the reduction is based on your examination of the INE that shows that the model was overestimating income. So you made an adjustment on that to reflect closer to what the income would be?
Yes, and to also bring it more reflective of the sale price. So it's reflective.
Okay.
It's reflective of the model overestimating the income and the value.
Okay, I note that increase works out to about 4%. So is 4% reasonable from September 19? Like I'm talking about the sale price to your revised value.
April 1st to April 2021.
Yeah, it's
I
about a
would say
4%
so.
increase. Yeah, you find that to be a reasonable increase over that period?
I would say so. Sometimes over 2-year assessment cycles, the increase can be 10 and 20% sometimes. But I think those increases have maybe slowed down a little bit. So I think 4% over maybe a year and a half might be reasonable.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wong.
Richard, any questions?
I was following that line as well, and I'm just concerned I don't see any evidence of your presentation that is a fair market value, Mr. Wong. You're telling us it is, but have you provided evidence here? I haven't been able to find it.
With regards to the actual market going up, I have not provided any evidence in that regard. But speaking towards how the market has been over the past 10 or 15 years, the market has pretty much been going up, and multifamily is one of the housing types that seems to be unaffected by very much, and they continue to be, I guess, in demand. According to a lot of things that I read, people are always surprised by, I guess, the demand for residential as compared to other types of properties.
And yet the other day we had a fellow telling us that there's a glut of multifamily residents being built in the city, and it's having a dire impact on pricing, possibly. You don't know anything about that, do you?
Well, the thing is that might be the case, but we're not going to know. We're not going to know for another 5 or 10 years to determine if that's actually the case. Like what's happening right now, what we can do in terms of predicting values based off of information that we do know, and information that we do know is basically it's based off of the past. It's based off of historical information and not necessarily like today's information. It's based off of information that is known from a year ago and 2 years ago in terms of determining what the market is. With regards to the maybe overabundance of apartment buildings, we might not see the effects of that until later on. And with regards to maybe that having a negative effect on value, we're not going to be able to know that until for at least a few years yet.
But in this one case, you made a decision to make an adjustment. I've sat in a number of hearings with you, and the model has been sacrosanct. The model is the model, but this one you chose to make an adjustment. I understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And I have no questions. Any requirement for summary by the applicant?
No, just if we're going to be looking at a value, we know that it's sold for $675,000. So good information in terms of what the value would be.
Okay, Mr. Wong?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so that concludes 25 Cromwell Street. We are going to take a 5-minute recess before we proceed with the last one on the docket. Thank you, Bellen. I'll now call the hearing back to order. Next property on the docket is item number 5, 130 St. Anne's Road, file number 22-498. Any outstanding issues here, Mr. Wong or the applicant?
No.
No issues, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wong, when you are ready, please.
Okay, the subject property is 130 St. Anne's Road. The roll number is 080-009-344-00. I'm going to read that again. 080-009-344-00. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 2005 and it has 12 suites with 12 outdoor parking stalls. On page 2 is the sales history for the subject property. The property sold the most recently in 2010 for $1,775,000. On page 7, or sorry, on page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,268 to get a potential income of $182,000. We use a 2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $179,000. And we use a 42% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $103,000. Capped at 4.25%, we have an estimated market value of $2,442,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables showing that the rent reviews are in line with what's in the market. On page 6 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. The average income from 2018 to 2020 is about $151,000, and that's noticeably lower than what the model is at $182,000. Their average expenses are about $69,000, and their estimated net operating income is $81,000. The $81,000 is noticeably lower than the model estimated $103,000. So using the same cap rate that the model has applied at 4.25%, I would like to suggest recommend that the value be revised to $1,916,000. And on page 7 is a comparable sale where the sale of 333 Ward, which is similar to the subject property 103 St. Anne's, sold for $158 a square foot, and that supports the $152 a square foot, which is based on the revised value of $1,916,000. On page 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates, and on page 9 are some cap rate sales ranging from 3.6 to 5.74%. On page 11 are the income and expenses submitted by the owner. The fact that the subject property sold for $1,775,000 in 2010, I feel that supports the revised value of $1,916,000. And the sale of 333 Ward also supports the revised value. So I ask that you accept the revised value of $1,916,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. So to the appellant, the assessors provided a revised assessment of $1,916,000 after reviewing the income and expense statement. Are you in agreement, or are you going to proceed with your presentation?
Unfortunately, Mr. Chair, I don't have permission from the owner to agree, so we'll have to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If we could turn to page 6, please.
Yes.
So when we take a look at page 6, 2018, we have income of the property of $159,000, 2019 of $148,000, and 2020 $154,000. So it's trending down. How did you decide to use 151,000 when looking at the property?
I was taking the average of 2018 and 19 and 20. Normally the trend is going up. So I'm not totally sure. I think something, it seems like it's something not normal happening with this property. And so I felt using the average income from 18 to 20 is reasonable.
Okay. When I take a look at the information provided on the income and expense form, starting on page 11, I'm seeing 149,000. I'm assuming that's a 149,740 So again, we can see that that is below the 151,000 that you're utilizing. Again, you feel the 151,000 is an appropriate number to use in your calculations?
Yes, considering that the normal trend is typically upward.
Right, and when we take a look at the vacancy, typically buildings don't have 10 to 15% vacancy, is that correct?
Yes, and actually I was hoping you could, seeing as that seems to be the case for the 3 years, I was hoping you could, I guess, elaborate on what's going on there, because I'm a little bit confused by that.
When we take a look at if we can go to page 4.
Yes.
So the property's been assessed with a 4.25% capitalization rate, right?
Yes.
Okay, and if I look on page 6, you're using that 4.25% capitalization rate in your calculation of the value, the proposed value, correct?
Yes.
Okay, if we take a look at page 9 for your sales, there is one, certainly 700 St. Mary's that is lower at 3.6, but for the most part, when we look at them, I'm seeing capitalization rates ranging from 4.77 to 5.5 or 5.454 there. So again, would you that 4.25, that's a pretty low capitalization rate, would you agree?
I think it is in the lowest 20th percentile. But say when you look at it in terms of the 1.9 million that it's estimated, I think it's reasonably accurate considering the subject property sold for 1.775 million in 2010, like 10 years prior to the reference date. So I'm not sure, the 4.25 is on the lower end of the range, but I feel that it yields an accurate estimate of value.
Right, but when it was sold, this is 2005, it would have been a 5-year-old property, right? So not a lot of things that need to be updated on the property. It'd be pretty decent condition when it's a 5-year-old property.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So I'm saying that the year built of the property is 2005. It sold in 2010. It would have sold as a 5-year-old property, right?
Yes.
Right. So when it would have sold, typically at 5 years, you don't have a lot of repair and maintenance that's necessary on a property. It's in pretty good condition, correct?
Yes.
And then right now, if we take a look at the valuation date, we're at a 15-year-old property. So we've got a few years, a few miles on it. You would agree that typically when you have a property that's 15 years, you're going to there's going to be more expenses that are going to come along with that. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I mean, if you want me to speak towards that, sure, the expenses they might go up, but the market from 2010 to 2021 has gone up significantly in that time, and potentially I would say at least double. And so I mean, you can consider, it would be fair to consider there being some slightly higher expenses, but it would also be fair to consider the market having increased a significant amount in that time frame.
Okay. And then just more of a general question. If we can turn to page 7, just for the evidence, you would agree on the unit count. Seeing 98 1-bedrooms, 52 2-bedrooms. It looks like that's just more of an oversight. Would that be correct? Because we've got 12 bedrooms within the unit.
That is a typo.
Yeah, right on. Okay, I think that concludes my question. Actually, sorry. And then for 333 Ward, if we take a look at it, you agree that 333 Ward is a substantially different property when they compare it to the subject property, right?
Mostly in terms of unit the number of units, but I would say it's very similar in terms of age and construction.
Oh, for sure, age, and it's 2 3 stories, I see that, but even when you look at the pictures on page 7 and page 3, or sorry, on page 7, the top and the bottom picture there, would you not disagree, or would you not agree that they look fairly different just in terms of the types of properties that we're looking at?
Like I said, aside from the size of the building, I believe that the construction would be very similar.
All right, that concludes my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
No, nothing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, quickly, is this located on St. Anne's Road? Is it facing St. Anne's, or is it on the corner of St. Anne's? And I'm not sure what street it is, but
It's facing St. Anne's and it's in between the Superstore and the St. Anne's and St. Mary's breakoff split.
across the street on the west side of St. Anne's?
It's on the west side of St. Anne's, correct?
Okay, perfect. And my only other question is, I'm looking at the net operating income submitted by the owner, property owner, sorry, on page 10 and 11 or just 11? Okay, page 11.
Yep.
And did you review that INE?
I did.
Okay. So there seems to be a downward trend in the income and that kind of thing, but yet for 2020, the net operating income is very close to the model estimated net operating income. Am I right there? Just out by a little bit.
The original model or my revised value?
Let's see, your revised is 81,435. Was that the original? I'm sorry,
Yeah, that's the revised. The original was at 103,000.
yeah. So now so you're coming very close to the submitted income and expense statement.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was just an observation by myself. Was that the reason why you made the revised valuation?
No, it just worked out that way.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's my only question. Thank you. Okay. For the appellant, just bear with us a second, please, and we'll get to your brief. Okay, to the appellant, I'm just going to open this. It's freezing up here on me. There we are. Okay, when you're ready, please. 130 St. Anne's Road.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If we can turn to page 1, please, just a little bit of housekeeping. Just as a note on the hearing time, we have on page 1, it indicates 9 a.m. If the board can just note that should read 1 p.m. in terms of the change. And then if the board can turn me to page 3, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much. On page 3, we have a high-level view of the property. So the subject property is a 12-suite multi-residential property assessed using the income approach to value. The building was constructed in 2005 and sits on 8,743 square foot land parcel. The assessed value is $2,442,000. M&P is requesting a value of $1,005,900. The board will turn me to page 6.
Okay.
On page 6, we have our evaluation request here. So we're using an effective gross income of $142,914 for the property. An expense allowance of 47.32%. So the expense allowance is fairly close to what the assessor is. I believe the assessor is using 46.14. So we're fairly close. The income is a little bit lower. We're using the 42,000 versus the 142,000 versus the assessor that's using 152,000. And then we're using a 5% capitalization rate for that property to arrive at that value of $1,505,900. Page 8, we have a map of that property showing the location on St. Anne's and Sherwood Place there. We can see just an exterior photo on page 8, as well as some photos on page 9. Page 10, we have the rental revenue here. So this is, here we show the rental revenue. This is from April 20th to March 21st. March 31st, 2021. We can see that during this time frame over this year, the property generated revenue of $142,914. And when we take a look at the expenses, we can see the property has expenses of $69,619. When we take a look at the expenses, we can see that the expenses are coming from the material rentals, from the insurance, property taxes, a little bit of R&M, some telephone, utilities, hydro. So there is nothing related to the interest and bank charges or mortgage interest. So again, these expenses would be considered should be considered when we're looking at the property. Calculate the expense ratio. We divided the $67,619 by the $142,914 worth of revenue. You can see the property has a net operating income of $75,294 for that property, which is, if you look on page 6, what we're using in our calculation for that property. When it comes to the income parameters, I think the assessment department and MP are fairly close. While the assessment department has used the average over 3 years, again, MP is cognizant that the income is falling for this property, so we've used that $142,000 in terms of the revenue when looking at it. If the board will turn with me to page 11. So as indicated, the property has been assessed with a capitalization rate of 4.25%. The challenge is the fact that there haven't been really any sales of newer properties over a number of years. When we take a look at this, when we take a look at market reports, we can see market reports, Cushman and Wakefield, Colliers, and CBRE are all indicating that capitalization rates for multifamily properties range between 5 to 6%. So in our calculation, we're using that 5% capitalization rate. In terms of the conclusion, we take a look at the value. So you can see we provided the same calculations on page 12 to show our $1,505,900 there when we're looking at that property. Page 16, continuing on until page 28, are simply support from market reports, again showing that 5%. When we take a look at that, showing that multifamily properties with that 5% capitalization rate. Then finally, starting at page 30, moving to page 52, is just information from the city of Winnipeg on their income producing properties. And taking a look at this property, again, it would be our position that while we do recognize that we're relatively close, we do think that the assessor has been a little bit rich in their potential income for that property. And in terms of the capitalization rate, we feel that a 4.25% capitalization rate is a little bit low. Based on what we're seeing, we would suggest a capitalization rate that's 5%, deriving that value of that $1,505,900. With that, I conclude my presentation. I welcome any questions from the board or from the assessment department. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
Yeah, I do have questions. My question is, Mr. Bruggen, can you explain why revenue is actually decreasing for this property and why there's such a high vacancy?
Unfortunately, I can't. This is our first year with this client, so I was just looking at the information they provided, which was the information for 2021. I did not realize, to be honest, that the revenue had been dropping for a number of years prior to that.
So you do not have access to prior years to, I see you did it on a part year, part 20, Part 21. Have you looked, do they report on a calendar year or on a January or April to March year?
I don't know what the year end is. This is a privately held apartment building. So this was just information provided to us by the accountant. We indicated that we were looking for the revenue for the year prior to April 1st, 2021, the valuation date. So I'm not sure what their, to be honest, I'm not sure what they're reporting, what they use for the reporting year.
Okay. Okay. Because looking at what the city has, you're obviously coming up with a different income. And I'm wondering, could that be explained by the different reporting cycle that you're using?
I mean, to be in my own opinion, I wouldn't think it would. I would think that it doesn't strike me that there'd be any seasonality in terms of revenue for the apartment building. I don't know if there'd be really any, if looking at it on a calendar year versus looking at it at any particular point and ending would really bear much difference, in my opinion.
Did you have access to the I&E statement submitted?
I know when we requested the information from our client, we were looking for the income for the last year or leading up to the April 1st, 2021 date. They were able to give us directly to that date, which again doesn't usually happen, but in this case it did. And until I saw the assessor's brief, I didn't realize the revenue had been falling for a number of years. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get more information than that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Richard, any questions? Was that a no, Richard? Sorry.
You're muted.
No questions.
Thank you. Okay, so my question is, and maybe the assessor documented a sale in 2010 for $1,775,000. Would you have any knowledge of that sale at all?
I do not. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Wong, I'm going to ask you out of turn here, but would you have any knowledge of that sale? Was that a arm's length sale? Was that a construction sale? Permits declared or?
Well, it seemed to have sold 5 years afterwards. I don't think it's that, but.
Oh yeah, okay, that's right. Original age was 2005 construction. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
it was sold as per a multiple listing service.
Okay. All right. So it was on the open market. Okay. So my question to the appellant would be your most recent valuation is coming in about, let's say, $250,000 less than that sale in 2010. Any comments on why your value, or how would you reconcile that, I guess?
I mean, I think when we're taking a look at the actual performance of the property in 2021, that's what would dictate what it would be purchased and sold for in the market. So, I mean, in my own opinion, Mr. Chair, I don't know if the sale that's from 2010 is overly relevant when we're taking a look at the April 1st, 2021 valuation date. I think properties change. I think they age. But beyond that, I unfortunately can't point to anything more than that. So okay. I recognize that it exists, but again, when we're looking at it, we're taking a look at the income.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. And you have no knowledge of that sale either. So, okay, I'll leave it at that then. Okay. That's my only questions. Mr. Wong, requirement for summary.
Yeah, I guess the property did sell for $1,775,000 on the open market in 2010, and the market has appreciated significantly in that time. So I feel it's very supportive of the recommended revised value of $1,916,000, and so I ask that you accept that revised value.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think when we take a look at the information that we have today, we can see when we take a look at the capitalization rates that you can find outlined from on page 9 of the assessor's brief. There's only one capitalization rate there that's below that 4.25% or 4.25% capitalization rate. And when we take a look at the overall caps within the market, we can see that they're typically, market reports are indicating 5%. Finally, when we take a look at the income for the property, we know that it's decreasing. The assessor has used 151,000, which is an average, but that's closer to the. But we see that the last two sales, 19 and 20, are below that. So again, I do think that there should be some consideration for that when we're taking a look at what the value of this property should be.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 130 St. Anne's Road. Next property on the docket is item number 6, and we're dealing with 1145 Dakota Street, file number 22-423. Mr. Wong, give us a minute, please, while we get up to speed with your brief here.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please, 1145 Dakota Street. First of all, do we have any outstanding issues here on this one?
No.
No. Applicant also no outstanding issues?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please, 1145 Dakota Street.
Okay, the subject is 1145 Dakota Street. The roll number is 080-056-33400. It's a residential apartment block that's 4 stories high. It was built in 2006 and it has 170 suites with 107 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is the location of the subject property. It's in the south end of the city by St. Vital Shopping Center. This is also an assisted living property. But we were going to be valuing it as a regular apartment building. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,166 to get a potential income of $2,378,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $2,302,000. And we use a 46% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $1,242,000. Capped at 4.95%, we have an estimated market value of $25,106,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables showing that the rent reviews are in line with what's in the market. At the bottom of page 6 are some expense comparables that range from 33 to 47%. This supports the model expense ratio of 46.03%. And on page 7 is a comparable sale. 333 Ward sold for $158 a square foot. And I think this supports the assessed value at $146 a square foot. On page 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And page 9 are some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. On page 11 is the income statement provided by the owner. And on page 15 is the permit for the subject property. When it was built in 2005, their indicated permit value is 16 million, and the land was purchased for about $1 million in 2003. That's a total of about $17 million as of say 2003/2005. I feel that this supports the 2021 reference date value of 25 million. So when you look at the market for valuation, The market supports the rents that we've applied. It also supports the expenses and cap rate. But also when you look at a comparable sale, the comparable sales support the model value. Having said that, I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $25,106,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Does the applicant have any questions of the assessor?
My questions, Mr. Chair, would be the same as what we had for 216, so Edison. So if we can just reference that, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I have no questions either. Just bear with us 1 second so we can get to your brief for 1145 Dakota Street. When the applicant is ready, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If we can turn to page 1, please. Just let me know when you're there.
Yes.
Okay, so just the one note is if we look at the hearing time, it's indicated at 9 a.m. If we can change that to 1 p.m., please, that would be great. And then if we can move to page 3 when the board's ready.
We are ready, please.
Thank you very much. So as indicated, the subject property is a 170 suite multi-residential property. It's been assessed using the income approach to value. The property was constructed in 2005 and sits on 7.9 acres of land. As mentioned, the property has assessed value of $24,713,000. MP is requesting a value of $23,198,700. Sorry, I apologize. I should have been truncated, but it was not. Page 4 and 5 are the assessors, the breakdown on that particular property. Page 6 is our requested value. So as indicated and has been discussed previously, as this is an assisted living facility, we are looking at this a little differently than the city. The city is using a multi-residential model. We are looking at it using the parameters from the property, as well as vacancy rates for assisted living facilities and capitalization rates for assisted living facilities. You can see here that the potential income for the property, MP is using $2,985,208, an 8.2% vacancy rate. We're using an expense allowance of 47.09%, which is fairly close to what is actually assessed. The net income is $1,449,924. And then we are requesting that 6.25% capitalization rate to bring our value to $23,198,782 for that property. Page 8 is a map just showing the location of that property. This is courtesy of the Winnipeg Assessment Department. Page 9 is an overhead map as well as an exterior picture, and the same thing with page 10. Page 11 is a discussion in terms of the valuation of the property and how assisted living facilities differ from multi-residential properties, some of the additional factors and considerations that go into them. We've already gone over a lot of this, so I won't go through it again. Page 17, we have a discussion on the rental rate, explaining how we come to our revenue. As mentioned, this property has a 50-50 split between the business value as well as the building value. So we've used that when determining. Page 18 is the vacancy rate discussion that we had regarding the CMH information from CMHC, showing that 8.2% vacancy rate. Page 19 is the discussion on the expenses. Again, as we've seen from our previous properties, what we've done is we've looked at the expenses for the property, excluded the expenses that are related to the business, and only left those and made some adjustments to account for things like the management and the personnel fees, or the salary and wages. You can find more information on that on page 25 and 26. Showing the calculation of the expenses. So 26 particularly shows what we removed to come up with the expenses and how we did that and the adjustments we made. Page 20 is the capitalization rate discussion that we had previously. Again, showing that seniors housing sells for a different capitalization rate compared to multi-residential properties. Page 21, again, is the valuation for that property, showing a request of $23,198,700 for that. Continuing on, if we go to page 28 to 30, this is the email regarding the split between business and rental revenue. Page 32 to page 43 is information from CMHC. Pages 45, continuing on until page 162 is information on seniors housing as well as the market report showing the capitalization rates for those properties. Page 164, continuing on to page 180 is information regarding the impact of COVID on assisted living facilities. And then finally, starting on page 183, continuing on to page 205 is information from the city of Winnipeg. Now, I apologize, I realized I went through that fairly quickly, but I also suspect that the board has probably fairly familiar with the material by this point in time. But certainly if there are questions or clarification needed, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Richard?
Same old question. Are you aware of the configuration of the suites in this building?
Much the same as the other one. I believe that there is a kitchenette within the suite, but again, it's more suited for preparation of light meals versus 3 square meals a day.
But not bachelor suites, as in no facility.
No, yeah, they do have. I believe it's a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom. That is correct.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Richard. To the applicant, I did notice, or it was documented by the assessor, there was 1 bachelor suite. Would you know if that's for visitors or the caretaker, or?
I believe that they do have a suite where it is for family that family can use when they come visiting.
Yeah, okay, perfect. My second question is, would you know, you've declared an 8.2% vacancy in your workup. Would you know what the actual vacancy is in the building?
I do not. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's my only questions. Mr. Wong, any requirement for summary on this property?
No, thank you.
Okay, the applicant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I think when we take a look at these properties, there is a notable difference between multifamily and assisted living facilities. We can't use the parameters for multifamily property and just apply them to assisted living facility, given the preference of given the preference of investors, as well as some of the challenges that assisted living facilities have had to deal with over the course of the last few years. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes, 1145 Dakota Street. Next property on the docket is going to be item number 7, file number 22-528, and the address is 1281 Grant Avenue. And Mr. Wong, please bear with us a second here. Any issues, Mr. Wong, or the applicant?
No.
No, it's just Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wong, 1 second, please. 1281 Grant. Okay. Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please.
Okay, the subject property is 1281 Grant. The roll number is 120-157-06200. It's a residential apartment block that's 5 stories high. It was built in 1964 and it has 100 suites with 60 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's close to the Grant Park Shopping Center. On page 4 are some interior pictures of the subject property. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,021 to get a potential income of $1,225,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,186,000. And we used the 45% expense ratio to get a net operating income of 651,000. Capped at 6.1%, we have an estimated market value of 10,684,000. On page 6 are our rent comparables. Shows that the rents that we've applied are in line with what's in the market. On page 7 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. In 2020, their income was $1,272,000. Their expenses are $521,000. But they didn't have a management expense, so I added a management expense of 5% and an adjustment for an additional expense. So their operating expenses are $585,000. Their estimated net operating income is $687,000, and that's about $35,000 higher than what the model is estimated at $651,000. So I feel that the actual performance more than supports what the model has estimated. On page 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And on page 9 are some cap rate sales ranging from 3.6 to 5.74%. On page 11 is the income statement supplied by the owner. So when you look at the actual performance of the subject property, it supports the model and is actually about 35,000 higher. And the model cap rate is supported by the market. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at 10,684,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Does the applicant have any questions of the assessor?
Just one, Mr. Chair. So just so I'm clear, on page 7, I see you have added a management expense as well as some additional expense of $14,229. On page 12, I can see that the expenses were provided. Is the additional expense account for the professional fees, caretaker, office expenses, and R&M on there?
It's from the, yes.
Yeah, all right, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. That's everything I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
Nothing, thanks.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
I also have no questions. Mr. Applicant, just bear with us 1 second and we'll pull up your brief. Okay, when you're ready, please, 1281 Grant Avenue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If the board can turn with me to page 1. Just as a note, the hearing time should be changed from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then if the board can turn with me to page 3, please. Then just let me know when you're there.
I think we're all there.
Excellent, thank you very much. The subject property is a 100-suite multi-residential property. It's been assessed using the income approach to value. The property is constructed in 1964 and sits on 1.2 acre parcel of land. The assessed value for this property is $10,684,000. MVP is requesting a value of $9,923,000. As the board turns with me to page 4 and 5, this is the current assessment breakdown for this particular property, showing the inputs that were used to value the property. The board flips with me to page 6. We have MMP's request. So we're looking at a couple changes. So the first would be for a vacancy allowance for the property. The second would be for a capitalization rate change. Combined with these two changes, MVP is making the request of $9,923,000, or it comes to $9,923,003, truncated $9,923,000. The board turns with me to page 8. Page 8, we just have a map of where that property is located within the city, courtesy of the Winnipeg Assessment Department, as well as a picture of the property on page 8 and some exterior pictures on page 9. If the board will turn with me to page 10 when you have a chance.
Yes, we're good.
Excellent, thank you. So this property has had some vacancy struggles over the years. Here we provided a table showing how the assessed vacancy actually compares to the actual vacancy. So we can see in 2016, the annual 2016 vacancy was 10%. 2017, 3.4, 2018, 5.4 or 5.3, 2019, 5%, 2020 got a little bit better at 2.7%, and then 2021 we see it's back up again at 5.5%. So again, we can see the properties have some struggles with vacancy over this time frame. We can see that it has consistently been underperforming the market. And when we take a look, we can see the difference there in terms of what the vacancy is. And taking a look at this, we've taken a look at what the average vacancy is over the time frame. And we've also taken a look at where we are right now. So this is why we feel an increase of 1% to the vacancy allowance would be appropriate to account for some of the challenges that the property is dealing with. Additionally, if the board turns with me to page 11, we have a capitalization rate issue for the property. So the property has been assessed with a capitalization rate of 6.1%. When we take a look at sales within the area, we've identified 4 sales. A couple sales on Warlock, a couple sales on Corden. We can see these properties are selling, these sales occurred between 18 and 20. Using a rental rate of $1,011, which is derived from CMHC typicals, a typical vacancy rate of 1.8%, an expense ratio of 45%. We're arriving at NOIs. We're arriving at the NOIs calculated there between 72,000 and 196,000. Using this, we're ending up with capitalization rates ranging from 5.39% to 6.66%. We take a look at the median, we're coming into a median of 6.53%. Hence why I'm making a request for a capitalization rate of 6.5% for the property. If the board will turn to page 12. On page 12, we have the valuation for the property. You can see 1281 grants has been assessed at a value of $106,840 per unit. When we take a look at sales within the market, we can see sales within the market range from 98 to 121,000 a unit, with a median of $100,000 per unit. On page 13, we provide a map of where those sales are located. And on page 14, we provide our valuation for that property again. Page 17 are the pictures of some of those comparable sales. So the first one we have is 534 Warlaw. So we have exterior pictures on 17 and 18. Page 19, we have 553 Warlaw. We have an exterior picture on the top of page 19, as well as some interior photos on page 20, 21. You can see that this property, when we take a look, 553 Warlaw has leasing occurring for rents starting at $1,131. Now, granted, this is post fact, but again, when we take a look at what rate we've used when valuing to determine the capitalization rate, we've used just a little over $1,000. So again, providing additional support that rate that we've used, the inputs that we've used for our capitalization calculation appear reasonable. Page 22, we have 555 Corden, and page 23, we have 585 Corden. Again, for 585 Corden on page 24, 25, and 26, we have a couple interior photos. Page 27, we have information from CMHC in terms of multi-residential properties. I believe this is information from 2020. And we provide that CMHC report starting on page 34. This is just outlining where we got our rates of $1,100. So you can see when we take a look at the rates that have occurred in 1 bedrooms, that the rate of $1,100 is very reasonable as we look through. Page 36, page 47 is support for the sale. So we've used the Johnson report to determine that. And then starting on page 49, continuing till the end of the document, page 95, is just information from the city of Winnipeg. With that, I conclude my presentation. I welcome any questions from the board or from the assessor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions of the applicant?
I do have just a couple questions. With respect to your page 12, which compares sales, you've used comparables that range in number of suites from 11 to 30 versus our subject that has 100.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering why you believe these might be comparable sales that we should be looking at.
No, that's a very reasonable question. Unfortunately, it's one of those situations where as much as I'd love to have some sales that were more comparable in terms of size, we couldn't find any within the time frame that we were looking at. So, we're always faced with the situation: do we open it up and look at other areas of the city? Do we open it up and look at more years within our analysis? Or do we use the sales that we have within the time frame that we're trying to use? So, we ultimately determined that the time frame, between 18 and 20 was a better time frame to use, and try to get properties that are located, the location, the similar location, and the same thing with the year of construction. You kind of do the best with what you have.
Sure, I appreciate that. So, and I appreciate that it's difficult. So do you believe these are good comparables to the subject property then?
Yeah, so I think looking at them, and I think when we take a look at the pictures, they've obviously been updated. These properties have obviously been updated. There's been some money spent on them in terms of so some of the older properties have had quite a few updates. So I think, when we take a look at it, I think it'd be a reasonable comparison. I think we can probably appreciate that smaller properties do tend to sell for a higher rate per unit, just because there is a little more competition within the market. Not a lot of people looking to buy, $8 million, $9 million properties. But I think, again, when we're trying to determine what a correct value would be, at least provide some sort of indication.
And looking at the pictures, I note that your comparables are a little bit more character type apartments on smaller or less traffic streets. They don't have the proximity to the Grant Park shopping mall, grocery, that sort of thing. So having said that, I'm just trying to find the comparability between them,
Yeah. Again, appreciating, but they've been as far as we can tell, they've been all updated along the way. They look fairly modern. Lack of, I think it's almost like you have the trade-off, right? You lose a little bit of the amenities in terms of location for shopping centers, but you gain a quiet street, right? You're not located on, so you don't have the traffic going by. So, as we kind of try to work through the trade-offs, in our opinion, they would be a reasonable comparison when we're taking.
Okay, fair enough. You alluded to vacancy issues, but you didn't explain why there's vacancy issues. This is an older building. Are they doing refurbishing, and therefore, as they're refurbishing, when suites become vacant, they're doing that. Therefore, you know what I mean? What is the cause for the vacancy issues that you say they're having?
Yeah, so we talked to the owner a little bit. We didn't really get a great answer in terms of what that reasoning is. They are doing some refurbishing. When we look at the expenses, they are a little bit higher, but a lot of it is doing with units that have been vacant for a little bit, and they're doing updates to try to make them more appealing for the market. So there's kind of almost two approaches. So they haven't been spending money to try to do some of those things. But it's been an ongoing issue with this property for a number of years now with the vacancy. So
can you point me to your vacancy page again? Sorry, I didn't write it down.
You bet. So the vacancy can be found on page 10.
Page 10. Oh, I was close.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's ongoing thing since 2016. That's as far as the information they gave us. It goes back, but it could be from even longer in terms of what the vacancy issues have been.
Yeah, as you said, it sort of fluctuates. So that's why I was wondering if it was related to upgrades of suites and holding out suites longer for them to be refurbished. But you said you're not really sure about that.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn. Richard, any questions?
Yes, further to that point. So the management person did not talk about a major refurbishment in that building from 2017 to 2020, even into 2021, new balconies, new doors, new windows, new paint. None of that was mentioned.
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And I think all my questions have been covered. So I am good. Mr. Wong, any requirement for a summary?
Just I guess, a rebuttal, the last chart on.
I'm sorry. Okay. And we will bear with us 1 second here and we'll attempt to find that in our SharePoint here.
Right.
Here we are. Okay. I've got it. Lynn, Richard.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yep.
And does the applicant have it available?
I do. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wong, when you are ready, please, the rebuttal.
Okay. One of the cap rate sales that was mentioned is 555 Gordon, and the cap rate indicated by the applicant was 6.66%. But when you look at the income and the expenses from 2017, the year prior, or the year prior to the sale, they're indicating net operating income is 75,000, and that indicates a cap rate of 4.81%. So that's pretty much the income and expense information is on the last page or two. But that is I guess, my rebuttal for this particular file.
Okay, thank you. Does the applicant have any comments on the rebuttal?
Just give me 1 sec, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm just.
Take your time.
So just out of curiosity, so you're saying it's got an you're saying the NOI after you remove roof and mortgage is $75,722. So as I'm calculating it, I'm not quite clear on how you got to that number. I'm getting about $50,000 in expenses for the property. And that would take me to just a little bit under 100 grand on that. So can you just walk through what the calculations were?
Sure. If you look on my, I guess 555 Cordon page, their revenue is about 143,000. Is that?
Yeah, so then I'm taking a look. So we got $6,500 for management. We have 15,000 roughly for utilities. We've got looks like a slew of R&M so on the building. So it looks like they're putting $73,000 in. You're saying you remove the roof. So let's say there's an extra $20,000 there for R&M. $1,400 for landscaping. Removing ignoring the mortgage payments. I've got roughly 17,500 for property taxes. Insurance is about 2,800. For workers or payroll, get $2,300. So
if you look at the bottom of the very last page, the total expenses are 169,000.
Yeah. So
if basically the mortgage is it's 49,800. So let's just say 50,000.
Yeah.
On the previous page, there's a roof repairs of $51,000.
Yeah. And
that's what I removed. So if you remove those two items, the roof repair, I believe, is a capital item, and the mortgage is mortgage. So if you remove 100,000 from the 169,000 in total expenses, that leaves about 69,000. And that's pretty much what I've indicated on my front page.
I'm getting 82,000. Roughly. So if I'm looking at revenue, if I'm looking at total revenues of 143,000 and we're subtracting roughly 66,000, I'm getting $82,000, right?
Can you do the calculation of like their total expenses are 169,000,
Yeah.
302?
So if I'm taking off 100,000, so let's say 69,000.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm taking that away from the 143,000.
Yes. And that's should be about 75,000.
Okay, yeah. It's 75,000, and then 555 supported. Okay, all right. No, that makes sense. Sorry, I apologize. I just needed to, I wasn't quite sure on where that was all coming from. So thank you.
Yep.
Oh, no, no problem. We've clarified that. Any other questions?
The other question, I mean, did you provide the information for the ward law or the cordon or the 585 cordon?
I did not.
No. Okay. So the only thing, but again, if we take a look at that and we're looking at the median, would that have any impact on what the median would be?
If you were looking at the median, it might not affect it too much.
Okay. All right. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So that, did I ask Richard any questions on the rebuttal?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Lynn?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I have no questions either. Just trying to keep it in order here. Okay, so now we find the applicant's brief, I believe, and for 1281 grant, and bear with us 1 second, please. No, we did that already. I'm sorry, we did it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're looking at Wilkes.
Yes. Okay, so I guess that concludes 1281 Grant Avenue. Any requirement for summary? Mr. Wong?
No, thank you.
Okay. Applicant?
No, I'm okay, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry. All right, now the last one on the docket. Item number 8, file number 22-421. The address is 909 Wilkes Avenue, and we are dealing with a 2020 realty appeal. And bear with us, Mr. Wong. And I think we're lucky enough to have another assisted living property to end our hearing. Is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Wong, okay. All right. So 909 Wilkes Avenue, when you're ready, please.
Yeah, it'll be very, very similar to the others.
Sure.
The subject property is 909 Wilkes Avenue. The roll number is 120-975-29600. It's a residential apartment block that's 4 stories high. It was built in 2004 and it has 118 units with 43 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location, and it is an assisted living property. On page 4 are some pictures of the inside of the subject property. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,117 to get a potential income of $1,582,000. We used a 4.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,516,000. We used a 46% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $817,000. Capped at 4.85%, we have an estimated market value of $16,860,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables showing that the rents that we've applied are in line with what's in the market. On the bottom of page 6 are some expense comparables ranging from 33 to 47%. That supports the model's expense ratio of 46.07%. On page 7 is a comparable sale with 333 Ward. And you can maybe the value per square foot for 333 Ward is $158, and I think that supports the assessed value, the assessed rate of $131 a square foot. And looking at the pictures of 1145 Ward and 1145 Dakota and 333 Ward, one might say that 1145 Dakota is superior. On page 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 9 are some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. The remainder of my brief is the income statements supplied by the owner. So the model rent and the expenses are supported by the market. The model cap rate is also supported by the market. When you look at sale of 333 Ward, that supports the model value. Having said that, I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $16,860,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Would the applicant have any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Just the same questions we had for 216 Edison, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
No, none. Thanks.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I have no questions either. Mr. Applicant, bear with us 1 second, please, till we get to your brief. Okay, when you're ready, please, 909 Wilkes Avenue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The board will turn with me to page 3. We'll get started. So as discussed, the subject property is a 118 suite assisted living facility. The income approach has been used to determine the value of the property. The building was constructed in 2004 and sits on 3.3 acres of land. The property has been assessed at a value of $16,860,000. MP is requesting a value of $12,069,200. Page 4 and 5 are the income breakdown for this particular property. The board will turn with me to page 6. On page 6, we have our income request. So again, this property is an assisted living facility. You can see we've used you can see we're using potential income of $1,833,234. This was calculated by using 50% of the revenue for the property. We're using an 8.2% vacancy allowance. The expenses for the property are 55.18%. We're using a 6.25% capitalization rate, arriving at our requested value of $12,069,258, which is truncated to $12,069,200. Page 8, we have the location of this particular property from the assessment website, as well as a picture on page 8, as well and page 9. Page 10 is a discussion about the differences between assisted living facilities and multifamily properties, some of the considerations that are there. If the board will turn with me to page 18, this is the information on the rental rate, how we've arrived at our rental rate using the 50% of the revenue. Page 9, we have the vacancy rate, similar to what we've seen before from CMHC, showing that 8.2% vacancy rate. Page 20, we have the expenses. Again, similar to what we had seen previously, we've taken the expenses and made adjustments to account to remove non-realty items. You can find that on page 27, where we've made those adjustments. Similar adjustments to what we've done previously. Page 21, we have the capitalization rate discussion. Again, same as what we've seen previously, taking a look at multi-residential properties, comparing to seniors housing, assisted living facilities, and showing the difference in those capitalization rates. Page 22 is the conclusion, showing again that total value. Page 29 to 31 is the email from the owner showing the revenue split between realty and non-realty items. Page 33 to 44 is the CMHC report showing that vacancy. Starting on page 46, continuing on until page 163 is information from market reports regarding seniors living facilities, assisted living facilities, what the implications that have been in terms of the capitalization rate. Page 165, continuing on to page 181 is information, news reports on the implications of COVID or the impact of COVID on assisted living facilities. And then finally, starting on page 184, continuing on to page 206, is the information from the city of Winnipeg on income producing properties. With that, unless there's any particular questions, I conclude my presentation and welcome any questions from the board or from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Richard, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Lynn, any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I think I might have missed it, but I'm looking for the cap rate study that you're coming up with 6.25%, and I can't find what page it was on.
So the sum, if the board, just give me one moment here. So on page 21 is a summary of the market reports, and then we have all the market reports in their entirety in the document, starting on page 46, continuing on until page 163. So if there's anything you want to discuss.
Okay, yeah. Just bear with me 1 second here. Okay. So you're stating that it should be 1.25 above the assessor's rate. I can't find your conclusion here. Maybe I'm missing it. I apologize.
Okay, so the property has been assessed with a 4.65% capitalization rate. We're asking 6.25% capitalization rate. So I guess just a little less than 1.5%.
Okay. All right.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I just ask one more question?
Of course.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Bruggen, but again, seniors housing is limited here to assisted living, or does it include the range of seniors housing, independent housing, plus 55? Like, what does seniors housing actually include?
So based on the reports that we're using, it does, so give me 1 second here. It does talk about a split, right? It says sorry, just give me 1 moment. So if we look at page,
yep.
Yeah, so if we look on page 89.
Okay, just give me a minute to get there then. That's not helping me. Hang on.
Actually, you know what? Page 89, I don't decided to disappear off my. You know what? That's disappearing. Sorry, I apologize. I don't know. For some reason, my computer has decided not to show that, not to show that page. Sorry, bear with me 1 moment here. Yeah, actually, you know what? Let's turn to 121. Page 121 would probably be a better option because that's at least showing up for me. I apologize. If we can just pivot to page 121.
Sure, just give us a second to get there.
Yeah, you bet. I apologize. I don't know. For some reason, my computer's just not interested in showing me that page.
Okay, that's okay. Okay,
So on page 121, you can see that they under seniors housing, they indicate seniors housing A, seniors housing B, and long-term care A. And then if the board turns with me to page 122,
yeah,
page 122, they provide a definition. So seniors housing, a residential a retirement residence that provides independent assisted living and or memory care services and accommodations as part of the monthly fee, access to meals or other services such as housekeeping, transportation, social and recreational activities may be provided to residents. And then if you can see long-term care, referred to as nursing homes. Long-term care homes provide accommodation and care services requiring 24-hour nursing and personal care. So
okay,
yeah, so when you take a look at the definition of seniors housing, you can see that the property would meet that definition, as it does provide it provides housekeeping, transportation, recreation activities, and meals. So that would fall within that category.
okay. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
You're
I
welcome.
realized I had asked it before, but it still wasn't clear.
No, and I mean I'm glad you did, because this is at least it provides that definition there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
No further questions.
Was that a follow-up question?
It actually was. I think I was.
Okay, good.
I think I jumped before you and after you.
Okay, perfect. No problem there. Okay. And
Sorry, can I just maybe ask one more question?
Yes, Mr. Wong, of course. Okay.
I guess going to page 120.
120?
Yeah.
I have to get back there again. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess in the bottom of page 120, it says senior housing, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I guess in the middle of the paragraph, I guess I'll just sort of maybe read it out. It's like the implementation of vaccines will continue to bolster consumer confidence, which is a key ingredient for a turnaround in operating performance from the rollout of the vaccines, or actually from a leasing perspective. Sorry, lead generation has improved significantly and is returning to pre-COVID levels for many communities. As vaccines reach critical mass, we expect to see an inflection point in occupancy midway through the year, kicking off an ensuing recovery. Might that indicate that maybe the issues that some of the assisted living and seniors housing might be a little bit more of a blip and temporary? Might that be what this indicates?
I don't know if we can. I think it indicates and shows expectation. I don't think necessarily, as you so aptly put earlier on, we don't know what the implications of this are going to be until a few years after the implementation, right? So much the same as what we see for various other asset classes. We certainly see they're expecting a turnaround, but until we see it, until we know what the implications are, we're kind of looking at that valuation date of April 1st, 2021. At that point in time, we know that they're still struggling with vacancy, and we still see that the capitalization rates are at that 6.25%. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I actually have one more question. I'm sorry, to the applicant. Do we know what the actual vacancy rate is on this property?
Unfortunately, I don't. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. That's my only question. Okay, Mr. Wong, any requirement for a summary?
No, thank you.
The applicant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I think we've gone over this a number of times, but I think when you take a look at the approach that's been used to value the property, an assisted living facility is not a multi-residential property. There's certainly different considerations that come into play. And we can even see through the market reports that market reports view assisted living facilities differently than they do multifamily properties. And again, I think we should be cognizant and be aware of that when we're coming up with the value of the property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In conclusion, we have heard all the items scheduled and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.